All right. The February 2nd meeting of the
Recording
Rancho.
in progress.
Yes, got it. Thank you. The February 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District is hereby called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We need a flag. We have a flag? Thank you. Let's see, George Cole, why don't you lead us in the pledge?
Okay, put on the spot. I love it. I pledge allegiance
To
the flag
of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty and justice for
justice
all.
for all.
Apologies, I haven't done that
The
since
Zoom
grade
pledge,
school.
that's what that was. Okay, roll call, please.
Director Avila,
Here.
Director Dennert,
Here.
Director Freeman,
Here.
Vice Chair Gray,
Here.
Chair O'Brien.
Here. Agenda review. Dan, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We don't have any changes recommended, but I got a few items to note for the record and for the board. Earlier this afternoon, we sent out a supplemental that included some email comments that we received after we sent out the report. There's 9 email comments. And then later this afternoon, we received 3 additional email comments. So the 9 that were sent out earlier, the board has those a part of the record. The 3 that we received late in the day, I'll need to read those for the record at the time we get to the item. Also wanted to note that Sandy is sitting in tonight as our clerk. Gina wasn't able to be here tonight, so she's helping us this evening. And also Brian Hamlet is serving as legal counsel this evening in the place of Brian Pierrick. So welcome to the 2 of them. That concludes agenda review for us, Chair.
All right.
Chair, can I ask a question? Am
Yes,
I
you may.
showing up on the screen or not?
No, you are not showing up on the screen. Start your video.
No, my video started. There's something wrong with my computer then. I'm here.
Okay.
But I just noticed that I'm not showing up and I don't know what to do about it. The video started, so.
Ed, I got a couple suggestions, but
Okay.
One is if you join from your desktop, sometimes you're using a web browser, but if you use the app instead, that's on your computer. Another one is
I used the app.
maybe join from your phone.
I don't know how to do that.
So if you go to the Park District's website and you click on the agenda for the Zoom link, your phone could download an app maybe for the later part of the meeting because it'll take a couple minutes to download, and then you can just log in from your phone.
Right. Okay.
You don't live too far. I could drive over there, but
No, you're good.
Okay.
I'm not that good looking anyway. Nobody's gonna miss that. But I just wanted everybody to know I'm trying, but it's not happening.
Okay.
I'm here.
we can hear you, and that's good.
We can hear you. Okay. We did agenda review. Public statements, items not on the agenda. Does anyone have a comment about an item not on the agenda? Please note we can't take any action, but you can tell us. Yes, George.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Excited to be here to talk to everybody. My name's George. I'm a member of the local disc golf club out here. Just in case you don't know what disc golf is or you're not super familiar, it's also known as Frisbee golf. And then we have a couple of courses here in Simi at Sequoia Park and Sycamore Park. And I wanted to share a couple things about the growth of the sport in general. The sport has grown a lot in the last couple of years, especially due to the pandemic. In 2020, the Professional Disc Golf Association grew of over 26,000 new players, which is an 84% increase in growth. And that's just people that are serious enough to sign up for official tournaments called for the Professional Disc Golf Association. And then in 2021, that increased by another 150% after that. So the sport is booming in general, and Simi Valley has some work to keep up with the demand. So here at Sycamore Park, which is our most popular and coolest course that we have in Simi so far, a few cool stats about it. 11,000 rounds have been recorded on an app known as UDisc. about 20-25% of the players that actually play disc golf at the courses will record these rounds, their score rounds on their phone on this UDisc app. And meaning that these numbers are extremely conservative because a lot of people play casual rounds without documenting them. So 11,000 rounds have been recorded ever at Sycamore Park on UDisc, and 6,000 of them were in 2021 alone. And 930 different players have logged in rounds on UDisc at Sycamore Park. And in 2021, there were 640 unique players counted. So the number of rounds recorded increased throughout these first few months of the pandemic, but they haven't dropped since. And there are a lot of people that are really getting a lot out of this park and a lot of enjoyment out of it. So the course is awesome and cool in a lot of ways, but it is incomplete compared to even some other courses that we have around here, like in Thousand Oaks. So there are a few things that we can do. Just, I know that we cannot take action in this meeting, but I wanted to throw the idea out there and let you guys know that I am really happy to be able to work with you guys on whatever steps of it you would like some help with. So there's several things that we could do to turn this already very enjoyable but incomplete course into a really special place for Simi Valley. And the first, cheapest, and most impactful thing of which we can do is introduce new pin placements. So what I mean by that is there are 12 baskets, which are like, if you make the analogy to normal golf, would be the holes, right? There's 12 unique holes at the course, and that's not up to par of like the 18 baskets that you'd like to see at a full-size course. So something that we can do is introduce new pin placements at those courses. So for the same tee pad and the same layout of the course that is already there with minimal cost, you can just dig a hole, fill some concrete in it, put a pole in, and then that gives us the option to move the basket from one spot to the other. And that's probably the end of my time. So,
Yeah. Chair, if I could.
Yes, go ahead.
George, if you can send your list of ideas in through an email to me, we'll take a look at that as staff and talk it through. So, and then I can reach out to you.
And I'm hearing
Okay,
an
thank you,
offer of
Dan.
free labor and volunteering somewhere in there.
Absolutely. We have a team of people ready to take action, and they're going to be showing up at the board meetings from now on for a little bit to prove that to you.
And for the board's knowledge, I did have a preliminary conversation with both George and Jonathan, I think, who's on the call as well, about potential tournament ideas and some of these ideas conceptually. So I'm happy to see them show up at the meeting tonight because they certainly have a passion for the sport.
Thank you. Chair, is there anyone else who might want to comment?
Yeah, I'd like to comment.
Okay.
My name is Chavez. I'm part of the disc golf club here, Simi Valley as well. And I'd like to just follow up on a few things that George was pointing out, the new pin placements. You know, whether you move the basket 10 feet forward, 10 feet back, in any direction, it creates a new hole. There's a disc golf course in Thousand Oaks called Rapid Flats. Rapid Flats is on 10 acres. It's a 9-hole course. And the unique thing about Rapid Flats is that per hole, they have 3 baskets. So when you go over there, they have a red basket, a yellow basket, and a blue basket. So when you show up there, you have the choice of playing 9 holes, 18 holes, or 27 holes. And I think that if we add an extra tee or an extra basket per hole and make it a 24 hole course, it'll definitely make it a lot more fun to play and a lot more pleasing. Another thing that I'd like to point out is tee signs. We have I guess we got a QR code that's on hole 1 that you go up to it, use your phone, and it directs you towards UDisc. But not everyone's sort of tech savvy, and UDisc can be a little confusing at times to people. So I would think that tee signs might be a better way to show the rules of each hole. Because on hole 3, as of right now, there's a mandatory that is you have to throw around a tree. And right now there's a sign that says Mando Right, but it's right next to the T pad. So it's a little bit confusing. It doesn't really state that you have to throw around the tree and whatnot. These T signs usually have an aerial illustration of the hole, and they cover the distance, the rules of the hole, mandatories, out of bounds and whatnot. And they also have a spot usually for like sponsorship. So local businesses could sponsor a hole, pay, a small fee that usually will pay for the T sign itself. And it'd be good for, local businesses in general. And right now, currently on UDisc, they rate the courses on a scale from 1 to 5. And Sycamore is currently at a 4.0, which is great. But I think with some small modifications to the course, if we were able to go through with some of these ideas, we could definitely bring it up to a 4.3 or 4.4. And that's pretty much.
Okay.
I know we're not discussing it at length tonight because it's not on the agenda. I had spoken to a few disc golfers about major disc golf tournaments and what would it take to get to this area. So they were coming up with some ideas of what improvements it would take. So as they meet with staff, I would just ask them to keep that part in mind.
Are there any other public comments, items not on the agenda? Okay. Moving along to item 5, approval of minutes of the meeting of January 19th, 2022.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Roll call, please, Cindy.
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Dennert,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gray,
Aye.
and Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Okay, great. Item 6, consent agenda. Any questions?
I'll move approval.
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Yes, Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Dennert,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gray,
Aye.
and Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Okay, great. Item 7, presentations, scheduled items, and public hearings. A, presentation of full-time employee of the month for January 2022 to Paul Friedeborn, Senior Park Maintenance Supervisor, Grounds.
Thank you, Chair, Director of Administration. Ms. Pennington will provide the report.
Thank you, Chair O'Brien and members of the board. I'm pleased to present this evening the full-time employee of the month for January 2022 to Paul Friedeborn. Paul is a senior maintenance supervisor in the planning and maintenance department. He's worked for the district for 24 years, and this is his 5th employee of the month award. The person who nominated Paul stated the following: Paul Friedeborn is an outstanding Park District employee. He's a hard worker, he's conscientious, and is committed to a job well done. He takes his role as a supervisor seriously and follows through on the requirements of the position. Paul oversees his area of responsibility in Simi Valley and upholds the district's high standards of well-maintained parks and trails. Paul goes above and beyond his job duties and assists with graffiti removal projects on Park District trails. He loads the supplies, conducts safety training, and leads the volunteers through the event. In addition, Paul is active in the community. He collects toys for underprivileged children during the holidays and manages blood drives. For these reasons and many others, Paul is deserving of the Employee of the Month award. And Paul's on the line this evening with us. Congratulations, Paul.
Thank you very much. I owe it to my crews and the volunteers from the community.
Fabulous.
Chair O'Brien. Oh, let Dan go ahead.
Yeah, just
go
in
ahead.
follow-up to Teresa, I just want to, Paul is, as we all know, outstanding. The best way I could describe it, he is a get-it-done guy. If there's graffiti, if there's a maintenance issue, if there's something that needs to be addressed that we hear about from the public, Paul jumps on that and he jumps on it quickly. And I can't say enough about him and what he does for our community. Just outstanding. So thank you, Paul, for your service to the district and congratulations on your award.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
Chair
Dan.
O'Brien?
Yes. Ricky.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, congratulations, Paul. I think you're great. Just outstanding, well-deserved. This is your 5th one. I think that qualifies you for the Tournament of Champions or something. So anyway, congratulations, Paul.
Thank you, Red.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, congratulations, Paul. Well deserved.
Yes, I think it's terrific that you're recognized again. Really, you're such an asset to the district, and I want to just congratulate you on the honor, but really, we really appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Paul, I have this autographed copy of you on the cover of our activity guide. I didn't know you were winning the award when I asked for the autograph, but I appreciate that we celebrate our workers here and the workers that might not always get recognized in the community. There's a long list of things that you do that I'm very impressed with, but a summary of that is being a good citizen and an example to others. From blood drives to Christmas gifts for kids. Do I have this detail right? You also served in our military?
Yes, 10 years in the Army.
A vet and active in Knights of Columbus, and the chili cook-off is coming up. I've not participated in the past, but I'm looking forward to checking that out. When we cover up graffiti, Paul organizes a massive group. I think the largest time is we had 35 people there. But think of Paul's impact, all the supplies for 35 people and planning it all out. That means that 35 people got a chance to do something good. He created an outdoors program basically, because they're hiking, getting exercising, learning about natural and physical environmental history, learning about the Chumash people in the area. And Paul, you do it all quietly and with a big smile on your face, no matter how hard the work is. So you're deserving of this award, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Brian. We have a lot of great volunteers in the community that have helped us out, and couldn't do it without them.
And you do such a good job with them that they come back, and that's impressive. You make them hike for hours and they come back another time.
No gain without pain.
Great. Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Item B, status of the district's response to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic.
Thank you, Chair. I have a very brief report. We've had one COVID-related complaint regarding masking, concern over masking in one of our line dancing classes. Mr. Miller has followed up with the person and just talked it through with them and making sure we're responsive to that. We've had, since our last meeting, we've had 5 positive cases in the organization, and we currently have 5 that are on exposure protocols. All that being said, we've got 7 people out right now. We are continuing to operate fully at 100% of what we can do right now. So the other staff are picking up that workload when we have folks that have to be out from time to time. So it hasn't impacted operations to this point. And then finally, the federal vaccination testing mandate is off again. So that is not happening at this time. And that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, District Manager.
My question would probably be for Zach to answer. But Zach, you spoke to the person about the line dancing class.
Yes,
How
that's
happy did they seem with your response?
Yeah, they were very open to the realities of trying to enforce these rules. As everyone knows, these have been kind of ongoing discussions and kind of a class by class issue. But after speaking with the gentleman, both he and his daughter are participating in the line dancing class, and I feel that they were satisfied with the response. And we've kind of re-upped our communication again with our instructors and with the participants to keep in mind the mandate while we're doing physical activities indoors.
And they're going to continue in the class?
Yes, that's correct. They have 2 more classes in this session. I believe the day I spoke to him was the same day he was going to attend that evening. I believe there's 1 more class in the session. And then we take about a 3-week break before we start again at the end of February. So maybe by that time we'll have a new mandate that we can operate under. But in the meantime, we're following it as close as we possibly can.
The reason I ask is if we advertise a class or activity and we advertise what the rules are for it, Well, there's an expectation if you sign up, that's what the rules are. So if you paid money and you plan and you bring your children there and then you find out, well, we didn't really mean that. That's frustrating because that means maybe a mask is required or maybe not, and maybe it's needed or not, but they signed up under one set of rules and they show up to the meeting or whatever it is. And if that's not happening, I could get why that's frustrating for an individual not knowing what it's going to be, but I'm happy that you were able to work it out.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public on this issue? Okay. Item 8, continued business. There is none. Item 9, new business. A, report on the 1/13/2022 Oak Park Planning Committee meeting. Verbal report.
Thank you, Chair. As the board's aware, each time we have a committee meeting in Oak Park at your next board meeting, we report out at the activity that occurred at the Oak Park committee meeting. So relative to that, there's several items on your agenda that required follow-up action from the board. The Oak Park Lagoon, the tree pruning, and the other contractual, the wildlife resiliency. So those items will be taken up as you guys hear those this evening. In addition to those items, the board discussed, if you'll recall that there was a tree at May Boyer Park that the board made a decision relative to remove it or not. The board had decided to contribute some funds to whatever might be the case, but I understand that the county has decided to not remove the tree. So we will be using a portion of what the board authorized to help with the project, and then the county is going to cover the difference in the cost. So just wanted to let you know that. The committee also discussed the Friends of Oak Park open space group. So if you recall, I don't know, about 8 months ago or maybe a year, we started, the community started a Friends of Oak Park open space group. We heard a report and some of the activities that they've got going on with that, but that's been an outstanding endeavor and it's gaining momentum. And we've got a volunteer group out there that's helping us with projects in the community. There was a bit of discussion about the organic waste mandate and what we can do potentially in support of that new state mandate. There were some suggestions regarding the trail guide and potential and some enhancements to that. They requested that we remove some fountain grass that's in Deer Hill Park, which Wayne is coordinating and taking care of. And then finally, they brought up the issue of wildlife guzzlers and had a very brief conversation about wildlife guzzlers. So the result of that was the committee had decided that guzzlers in today's times are complicated for wildlife, and so there was no follow-up on that item. So Chair, that concludes your report from the last Oak Park committee meeting, and the board's free to ask any questions or discuss it if you would like.
Are there any questions, members of the board? Any questions from the public? Okay.
Before we move on, Dan, I thought the meeting was very productive, and I'm excited for the members of that committee. I think they're doing a good job uniting the community to do good work. And I was very excited. Team Crayfish presented, a group of middle school kids taking out crayfish. And before you get sympathetic for the crayfish, they get fed to raccoons. Crayfish eat frogs. Frogs eat mosquito larvae. If you don't like mosquitoes, you shouldn't like crayfish. They're an invasive species. But they're accepting donations. You could talk to me later about that. And it goes to their middle school club. And they hunt down the crayfish and keep the community reducing the mosquito load or reducing how many mosquitoes are around.
Chair, if I could, just a reminder, we need to take public comment on the item as well when the time's appropriate.
Yeah. Is there any public comment on this item? Hearing none? Okay. Item B, ratification of appointment of members to the Oak Park Park and Recreation Planning Committee.
Thank you, Chair. Zach Miller will provide the report.
Good evening, Chair O'Brien, Board of Directors. This evening, we are asking for the ratification and appointment of the Oak Park Park and Recreation Planning Committee. This year, we had 3 candidates running for 2 positions on the committee. The term for the candidates that have been elected is from February 2022 to January of 2024. Tonight, we'd like the board to ratify the appointment of Mr. Harry Nedved and Ms. Ning Rosenthal to the Oak Park Park and Recreation Planning Committee. Harry and Ning both have a passion for Oak Park and have both expressed a desire to continue to work collaboratively with the district on issues related to Oak Park. Mr. J.L. Diaz will continue to serve as the MAC liaison in Oak Park, and Mr. Derek Ross will represent the Oak Park Unified School District on the committee for the upcoming year. Mr. Dan Cooper, Ms. Danny Brucius, and Ms. Sherry Wentworth continue to serve out their 2-year term on the committee as well. I notice a couple of the Oak Park committee members are here this evening, although I do not see either of the newly elected members. Harry has been on the committee in the past, and Ms. Ning Rosenthal is a new member of the committee. But that does conclude my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Okay.
How many candidates were there for the 2 positions that were filled?
We had 3 candidates officially pull nomination forms for the 2 seats.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Any public comment on this item? Okay. Item C.
Chair, we don't need a motion to approve the ratification of the.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
We do need a motion, or we do not?
Yeah, a motion to approve staff's recommendation.
I will entertain a motion to approve the ratification of appointment.
That works.
I'll move approval.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call, please, Sandy. Sandy?
Yes,
There
sorry.
you are.
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Dennert,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
No. You're muted, Elaine.
Yes.
thank you, Vice Chair Gray,
Aye.
and Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Okay, item C. Authorization to solicit bids for the Oak Canyon Community Park Lagoon renovation project.
Thank you, Chair. Director of Planning, Operations, and Maintenance, Mr. Nakaoka will present staff's report.
Chair O'Brien, members of the board, in the aftermath of the Wolseley fire and subsequent flood damage that occurred that devastated most of the Park District's area in Oak Park and along the southerly regions of Simi Valley, staff has been working on plans and specifications to clean up and renovate the Oak Park Lagoon. Since the board is well versed in the background and history of this project, I'm not going to reiterate all of the historical highlights that are mentioned in the staff report or actions taken by the board to get us to this momentous occasion. What I will say is that all of the plans and specifications for the project have been approved by the County of Ventura, and the finalization of the environmental permits are on track to be executed by the various regulatory agencies in the early part of March of 2022. The anticipated timeline for the project is provided in your staff report. Currently, staff is estimating that the cost of this project will range between $1.8 and $2.1 million. Adequate funds are in the this year's budget for 21-22 under the general fund Wolseley fire account in the amount of $2.5 million. I must say that this is the last and final insurance project for the Wolseley fire. We're almost done with it. At this time, staff is happy to request the board's authorization to solicit bids for the Oak Canyon Community Park Lagoon renovation project, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from board members? Any public comment on this item? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll
I'll make
second.
that motion.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please, Sandy.
Yes. Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Dennert,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gray,
Aye.
and Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Okay. All right, item D, approval of award of contract for the Medea Creek Wildfire Resiliency Palm Tree Removal Project.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Nakaoka will provide the report.
Chair O'Brien, members of the board, at its meeting of October 21st, 2021, the Board of Directors authorized the solicitation of bids for the Medea Creek Wildfire Resiliency Palm Tree Removal Project. What a mouthful. It's a long title. This project is for the removal of palm trees dead or alive or burnt along Medea Creek's watershed within Oak Canyon Community Park. This is one of the major grant components awarded to the Park District from the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy as part of the State of California Wildfire Prevention Early Action Funding Plan. A notice of inviting bids for the project was published in the Ventura County Star on December 12, 2021, and a total of 5 contractors received bid packages for the project. On January 18, 2022, 3 sealed bids were received in time for the bid opening. The apparent lowest responsive bidder is SGD Enterprises, doing business as Four Seasons Landscaping out of Van Nuys, California. SDG Enterprises has not previously worked for the Park District. Based on their low proposal price, staff contacted SDGD Enterprises to review their proposed submittal and the prices that were part of that project. And we asked them to confirm that they could do all the work within conformance with the plans and specifications for the project. We did receive written confirmation that they are quite comfortable with their proposal price, and they are looking forward to doing work for the Park District. SDG Enterprises, Four Seasons Landscaping, has held a contractor's license since 1993 in both landscape construction and as a specialty tree contractor. While they're not very well known in Ventura County, they have performed a lot of work for municipal agencies within Los Angeles and Orange County. We've checked their references. They seem to be, doing quite well. They have nothing but compliments about this company. Therefore, staff is confident that in the ability of SGD Enterprises, DBA, Four Seasons Landscaping, to complete this project in conformance with the plans and specifications. Staff is requesting a $10,000 project contingency to the total bid cost, which we're proposing to award both the base bid and both alternate bids. Therefore, the estimated cost of the project will be $79,000. It should be noted that funding for this project is a reimbursable grant expenditure through the Wildfire Prevention Early Action Funding Plan. Therefore, staff does not anticipate any fiscal impact to the district's budget. And at this time, staff is requesting that the board award a contract for the palm tree removal project to SGD Enterprises, DBA, Four Seasons Landscaping of Van Nuys, California, in the amount of $69,000, which includes both the base bid and both alternate bids for the project, and authorize the district manager to execute the agreement with the awarded contractor on behalf of the Park District, and to amend the agreement for project contingencies in the amount not exceeding $10,000 if and when the need arises for extra work or modifications to the project. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from board members?
Wayne, I have a question for you. That's a significant savings. I'm impressed. What do you credit to that they came along? Like, did you need to reach out to them, or I'm trying to give you credit because that's a lot of money we saved by going with them.
This is the first contractor that has actually probably read the Department of Industrial Relations prevailing wage rates. There are 2 separate wage rates, one for landscape construction and one for landscape maintenance. And the maintenance values are a lot lower, and that's what he bid his project on.
Well, I'm happy that they did that.
Okay, anyone else? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, who would like to make a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
And let me just say, I'm really excited this is finally happening after all this time. And I know it's been a stress on staff and the community, but I think we're on the way, and I'm really excited about it.
I would second that. Brian, you seconded?
Yeah.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes, Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Denner,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes,
Vice Chair Gray. I'm sorry, did you say yes?
Aye. Yeah.
Thank you. Chair O'Brien?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Related to that, but not needing a motion, Dan, we should consider a press release about the fire resiliency in Oak Park, because it was this project, but also the grant we got for equipment, and not in the CME Acorn, but the Acorn that covers Oak Park. If you think about it and you think that's a good idea, please do that. If you don't see a need, don't worry about it.
All right, will do. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, item E, authorization to solicit bids for tree trimming and pruning services at various district parks in Oak Park.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Nakaoka will provide the report.
While I'm loading up my staff with more work, here's another project for them. At its meeting on September 2nd, 2021, the board authorized staff to solicit bids for tree trimming and pruning services at various district parks in Simi Valley. As part of staff's presentation, it was noted that this year's tree trimming contract for Simi Valley and Oak Park would be separated into two separate bid packages. On November 18, 2021, the board awarded a contract to West Coast Arbors Incorporated from Anaheim, California, to perform this year's tree trimming and pruning contract in Simi Valley. The work on the project commenced on January 18, 2022, with a tentative completion date of February 18, 2022. For the Oak Park area and for this project, staff is proposing that 123 trees within our developed park sites and open space areas in Oak Park be included in the bid package. Specifications for the project will be based on a modified version of the Park District's standardized specification for tree trimming and pruning contracts, utilizing the Western chapter of International Society of Arboriculture standards, and my tongue's getting a little tied. These specifications will also include special provisions that the awarded contractor must retain the services of a certified arborist to monitor the work. On January 13, 2022, the Oak Park Recreation and Park Planning Committee was presented with a draft copy of the proposed tree trimming and pruning specifications and a detailed pictorial of the trees selected in Oak Park. The Oak Park Committee was requested to review the trees in the field and provide comments and or alternative recommendations to staff by February 11th, 2022. Based upon the comments that I get back from the committee, if there are any, I will revise the final bid package and solicit bids probably in the early part of March 2022. Funding for this project has been earmarked in the district's budget for this year under 2021-22 under the Oak Park Assessment Fund, Fund 30 for contract services. At this time, staff is requesting that the board authorize solicitation of bids for the tree trimming and pruning services at various district parks in Oak Park. And I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, are there any questions from board members? Any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. I'll make it myself. I'll make the motion that we approve, we authorize to solicit bids for tree trimming and pruning services, various district parks in Oak Park.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes. Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Dennert,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gray,
Aye.
and Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Okay. Item F, adoption of resolution number 2026 directing preparation of the engineer's report for the continuation of the Parks, Recreation and Open Space Maintenance and Improvement District of the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Pennington, with the assistance of Suzanne Barnes, our assessment district consultant, will provide the report on this item.
Yes, Chair O'Brien and members of the board, during the assessment process last year, the board requested a presentation to review the steps that are involved. This evening, Susan Barnes, the district's consultant from SCI Consulting Group, will provide an overview of the annual process and answer any questions the board or public may have. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to share my screen so you can hopefully see this presentation. There we go. Okay, so just a little bit about SCI Consulting Group very quickly. We've been helping various public agencies throughout California for over 30 years. We're active in the California Recreation and Park District Association and the California Special Districts Association, as well as other associations. We help with revenue measures, surveys, levy administration services, and planning services. And we're going to talk today about the levy administration. So the annual administration of your assessment that you've had for some time has been going along, but we just wanted to go over with you what the process is ideally, and to answer any questions that you may have about that. So it all pretty much kicks off in January, where we get the CPI is published. Your assessment, the maximum amount you can charge for your assessment is based on the CPI for the Los Angeles area, which from December 2020 to December 2021 was quite high. It was, as you can see, almost 6.6%, which is historically, one of the highest CPI rates that we've seen in recent years. In February, the board assigns an engineer of work to do the assessments. That's what we're asking you to do today with the resolution that you will be considering tonight. And we receive updated information from the county, so updated data, because as you know, parcels change over time, vacant parcels become developed, and sometimes things get converted from a house to a restaurant or who knows. And so we get updated information from the county in February, and that we should be receiving that actually next week, hopefully, from the county. In February, your district kicks off its budgeting process, as far as my understanding goes. It's also in March, then using the new data that we have, we inform district staff about how many SFEs or single family equivalents we believe that we're estimating for the coming year. We know there will, of course, be additional changes between February and July, but this is sort of based on the current status of parcels. And we let staff know what's the maximum maximum revenue we think you can receive this year based on the maximum rate that's allowed. That's based again on that CPI increase. And that's the point where we would be, ideally, the board would be giving direction to staff as they're developing the budget in regard to, okay, we want to charge no more than we did last year, or we want to increase it or less, or however you want to do your budget. But that's when you would want to be directing staff what projects basically you want them to be looking at for the coming fiscal year, and therefore how much money you're going to be spending of the assessment money to fund those projects that you're interested in. So once you've done that and the staff has compiled their preliminary budget, then in April they give that budget to us, and that's what we base the engineer's report on. So all the projects that are listed in your engineer's report and the resulting rate for single family home or SFE comes through that budgeting process to us, and then we give it back to you in that engineer's report. So we complete that in April, so that in May, you will have that report, and that's when you preliminarily approve the engineer's report. This resolution that you pass in May is actually published in the newspaper, that resolution itself, as your public hearing notice. This resolution does a couple things. It preliminarily approves the engineer's report, and it sets the date of the public hearing so you can invite the public to come. At that point, again, that notice of public hearing should be informing the public, hey, the board is intending to renew this assessment. This is the total dollar amount that assessment would bring in. This is what the rate is that we're expecting it to be. And then in June, you consider you hold the public hearing, listen to any input from the public, which often you don't actually have people from the public come and speak, as you know, about this item, but it happens sometimes. And then you would be approving the engineer's report and ordering the levies for the coming year. So in the past, sometimes the board has had discussions about how much to charge. And I know when COVID came in, that kind of threw everybody for a loop. But again, we're hoping that those discussions are really happening in March before the engineer's report is compiled. And then this is just sort of approving things as it goes along, unless something comes up that changes, which certainly could happen. In July, we get the lien roll from the county. We calculate the assessments. We submit those rolls to the county and the forms that they require so that they can put those on the tax rolls. Usually in August, they confirm those back to us, let us know if any parcels rejected for any reason or anything comes up, but we make sure that everything balances. And then September, October, whenever the tax bills come out, our phone number goes onto those tax bills. So if anybody has questions about how was this calculated, or why is it higher than last year, or any questions that they have about how that we came up with that charge or whether it's correct, or sometimes we'll get a call, someone saying, I don't think I should have to pay this. And, because sometimes a public agency thinks I shouldn't have to pay. You actually send out manual bills to those because the county won't put it on the tax bills. But at any rate, we take those questions throughout the year. We don't get a lot of questions, frankly, for your district, but we do occasionally get a few, especially if it's a new homeowner. Sometimes they just want to know, what do I get for this money? We explain it to them and they go, oh, I use that park all the time. That's great. Thank you. Okay, so that's basically an overview of the
organization.
So that was it. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Okay, are there any questions from board members?
I do.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear on this. Up until 2020, well, even prior to 2020, there was one particularly loud, aggressive board member in terms of how this was presented to us. That would be me. But there's a couple of us that have certainly been concerned about the increase in the assessment. I just want to be clear. Up until that time, it was automatically assumed that the board was going to vote for the maximum increase in the assessment. Is that assumption now gone? And rather than being directed in that fashion, will the board be able to make an open decision in that regard rather than being influenced by something that assumes a maximum increase in the assessment?
Okay, so that's a great question. And we never assume anything. Every year we tell the district what the maximum amount is that you can charge. And it's always up to the district to decide, do you want to charge the maximum? Do you want to charge less than that? So we never make an assumption. We always just say, this is your maximum. You tell us what your budget is, and that's what we're going to use for the engineer's report. So it's always up to you.
So maybe the question then is for the district manager and not for you, or maybe it's for both of you. But I know up until 2020, and even including 2020, I remember the 2020 year, all the budgetary assumptions were made on the maximum increase in the assessment. In 2022 was the one occasion since I've been on the board where the majority of the board actually voted against any increase in the assessment. And there was discussion about whether last year about whether there should be a maximum increase, and it was a 3-2 vote. When that increase was levied. So I guess, I don't know if the question's for you or for the district manager, but can we make sure that there's not just an automatic assumption when this is presented to us that there's going to be a maximum increase in the assessment? Because there's certainly not unanimity on the board in that regard from year to year.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Yes, that message is loud and clear. We have adjusted our time frame for the assessment, that the time frame aligns it a little better so that board has the discretion to make those budgetary decisions as they relate to the assessment. In addition to that, I think last year and certainly going into the next year, we'll make sure that there's not an assumption that we're collecting the maximum levy and that the board will have some options on the budgetary side should it not want to impose the full amount of the assessment. So yes, we have changed the process both in calendar and how we approach the budget process and when it's presented to the board relative to the assessment.
And the other question I have then, so it's understood that if it's already built into the budget, there becomes a concern among some board members, maybe even all board members. I think I'd even include myself in that, at least in terms of the concern part. There becomes a concern that if the assessment isn't increased in the maximum, that something's going to miss out that was already recommended. So I guess I would say, do we understand the problem with doing that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this year in our process to change the way we look at this, we can give you alternatives that are tied to your decisions on the assessment, meaning we won't assume that things are built in the budget. We'll give you the alternatives around the assessment decision. So yes, I will make sure that is clear, and we're not just assuming that when we build a budget that we're going to have the money from the assessment to support that budget.
And in that respect, is it understood that even though I think we're all aware that the increase in the CPI was higher than it has been in recent years, those who are paying the assessment, the taxpayer, the property owner, aren't necessarily better off than they were prior to the pandemic?
I'm sorry, Director, I didn't understand the question.
Well, I understand one of the things that was done in this presentation was indicating what the CPI was,
Right.
And that would indicate a bias toward increasing the assessment a considerable amount. But is it also understood when the recommendations are made that the general public as a whole, particularly those who are paying the assessment, are not necessarily any better off than they were since the pandemic started?
Yeah, generally I would say we provide the alternatives for the board, and that's kind of a board role to determine, what impact or what, the public can afford or not afford. So we try to give you the alternatives, and then what the impacts of those alternatives are, and leave it to the policymakers to decide, what you think is appropriate for an increase or no increase.
I would like to mention with the CPI, and I'm sorry if there was any implication taken. I was telling you what the CPI is and saying it's higher than usual, just as a matter of fact. One could argue that maybe that means everybody's worse off, right? Because they're paying more for things. So, but so is the district. But at any rate, what I do want to point out is that your assessment does have a cap in terms of you can't increase the maximum rate for your assessment more than 3% in any case. So you won't even have an option to increase your assessment by 6.6% or anything of that nature. So when you see the options, the highest amount you could increase the maximum assessment would be 3%. So just to make that clear. But of course you can charge the same as last year, less than last year. That's all entirely up to you based on what your needs are for the district.
And Director Abel, if I could add on, over the last few years, not just with the assessment, but with other items, there's an item tonight where we're giving the board the full range of alternatives. So when we give those alternatives relative to their impact on the fee payer or the taxpayer, certainly staff has received the message that the board wants to review the whole set of alternatives, not just an assumed maximum or say one alternative. We've tried to expand those alternatives to make sure the board is fully versed in all of those choices that you have.
Dan, if the assessment in total, not decreasing or increasing, but just in total went away, how would you describe the cut to the services that we provide? Like if the board tonight just said, we're not voting for this report, we're done with the assessment.
Yeah. So our budget with the assessment district, I don't have the precise number, but it's probably about 22 million. And the assessment district revenue provides about 2.3 million of that. So it's about a 10% piece of our total budget. So about 10% of the services we provide would have to be considered or reduced or in some form. That could take different shapes. It could take reducing maintenance staff. It could be reducing recreation program offerings, those kind of things. The bulk of the bulk of what we're using the assessment for is staffing at this point. So it would probably likely impact in some reduction in staff were we not to have the assessment. We're also using it to pay utilities, particularly, I think, and also to buy vehicles and some small maintenance projects. So all of those things would be impacted in some way. So that's generally, it's about 10% of our total operating budget though at this point.
So do you think the committee would notice that?
Yes.
I don't have any more questions, but I have some comments after we get public input.
Chair, you're muted.
Are there any more questions from other board members? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. Who would like to make a motion?
I do have some comments on it now that we did that, but first, can we rename Elaine so we can see that she's a board member? Just Director Elaine Freeman. I think it's
Sorry. What?
on Zoom. It doesn't have your full name and that you're a director. I was just asking for staff
why.
members to rename you if they can.
I don't know why.
That would be nice if it showed
Dan, is that something Alex
full
could do?
name and your director. There you go.
Perfect.
Okay.
And then my comments on this is for the public that's here tonight to talk about the services we provide, I would ask you to come back to the other meeting when we talk about funding for those services that we provide. So those two things are directly connected to each other. If you think we should provide more services, or if you think we should provide fewer services but have lower fees, come back to that meeting. It's a technical meeting, but those things are all connected to the other services we provide. And then Dan, I really liked what you mentioned about when you're building the budget, having the different levels of funding and tied to in a specific thing, because it's easy to say we should not raise the assessment if there's nothing connected to it. And it's much harder to say a choice if you're telling me that after school clubs aren't going to be staffed as well, or parks are not going to be, our maintenance list is going to grow, or if you say ranger hours are going to be cut. So I would like to see like the connection between the different levels and what's going to happen. Otherwise, there's always a temptation to do the easy part, but the hard part comes later. And I think those things should be connected to each other. I agree with Ed, what you said, Ed, about having the different options for us so we can see them all. And not that staff is telling us which one, but just giving us those options. And I like the idea that during that conversation, Ed and Dan, that you had, that we tie those things together.
So if I may comment, I agree with some of the basis of what Director Dennard is saying, but I deviate in terms of the process. When and one of my concerns, and this would be my request of the district manager and the staff, it's easy to come up with alternatives and make them something that jerks at the heart or jerks at the emotions and say this is what would be left out. At the end of the day, if you choose not to penalize the taxpayer further, the decision as to where we can cut doesn't need to be made ahead of time so that it makes it look like there's something punitive going on when the actual punitive action is taxing the property owner further. So I guess what I'm saying is it would be easy for the district manager and the staff to emphasize certain things that would encourage board members to give to do the highest amount of increase in the assessment, because you make it look like you were losing something valuable when that isn't necessarily the item that needs to be cut or the items that need to be cut. There's a lot of ways to balance a budget. There's a lot of ways to manage a budget, and it isn't necessarily by the edict of a district manager or a staff is this is what you would lose. So I do ask the district manager and the staff to be careful in terms of how it approaches that mission, because that could lead to a really biased result. And that's my concern with that method of doing business.
I'm open to providing those options. So if it's not just this thing is cut, but here's some of the things that the staff would be asking us to cut. But I think those two things are tied together because it's hard for people to pay all the assessments. And it's also hard to give up those things, but those things are tied together. If we just say, don't raise the assessment, cut it someplace, make sure no one ever notices, then why didn't we cut that immediately? If there's a service we could immediately cut that no one's going to notice, then Dan, I'd ask you to do that tonight. If there's something you could cut that isn't going to impact the public.
Well, in response to Director Danner, to me, the fairest thing to do to the public would be to assume that there is no increase in the assessment. That would be the fairest thing. And then if the decision is made to increase it, you decide what you're going to add. But you should never start with the idea that you're going to tax the public more. You should start with the idea that you're not going to tax the public more. And that's the problem that I have with that approach.
I'm not seeing either of those. I'm saying here's the list of different assessment levels and here's a list of services that are tied to that. But I see that, and that doesn't mean voting one way or another. Dan, you have both of our input, and some of it lines up together and some of it does not. How does that impact what you do, or do you have enough direction to do that?
I do. I've heard both perspectives, and I certainly understand both of your view on this. When we present the budget, I'll try to, or we will, present it in a way that captures trying to achieve both goals, so to speak. So I certainly understand what Ed is saying, and I understand what you're saying, Brian. So hopefully when we present that and we present the assessment and the choices you have around it, that we are being an honest and candid depiction of what would happen if we didn't do the full assessment and what would happen if we do. Recognizing that we don't want to necessarily target at the heartstrings of the most important programs or other, but just a very realistic laying out of how that decision would impact our operations in a very straightforward way. So I'll balance the two perspectives, and when we present it in May in our budget workshop and during the public hearing or whatever, I'll try to capture what you guys are after here, both of you.
I would like to also suggest that when we come to that point, included in that discussion are the funding shifts that came as a result of ERAF and redevelopment and how those impacted our budget. We haven't talked about those in the past. All of our costs are going up, salary increases, fuel, water, and we maintain a very high level of park service to the people. And I think they expect us to maintain our parks and do the best job we can with the money available. But as was pointed out, there is a cap of 3% no matter what the CPI is. So based on that, there are controls already built into the process. So I would make a motion to approve the engineer's report.
Before we do that, I'd like to respond to Director Freeman's comments, please. The first thing I want to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe last year, shockingly to me, this board actually, still with the pandemic going on, because we hadn't done an increase in 2020, actually went beyond the 3% increase last year. And we're allowed to do that. And that was stunning to me. The second thing I would say, in addition to the things that Director Freeman is asking for, I also believe that we should include as part of that discussion revenues that we've missed out on. For example, not raising golf course fees enough, which would be a much fairer thing than just overall taxing the property owner. And up until this year, until we had that outstanding report from Jeannie, that we missed out so much for, ever since I've been on this board, revenues from the rentals at Strathern. So I asked that that also be part of the report in terms of what we've missed out on that we could have done other than penalizing the property owner. So in addition to the items that Director Freeman is requesting, I'm requesting those items.
Okay, I'm taking notes here, and we'll bring all that back for the discussion.
All right, it's been moved. Do I hear a second? Ed, did you second?
Second.
I guarantee you I did not second.
Okay, I had a hunch, but I thought I'd check. All right, roll call, please, Sandy.
Yes. Director Avila,
Just as to this motion, with the comments made, aye.
Director Dennard,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gray,
Aye.
Chair O'Brien.
Aye, with all comments that Ed made, so,
The motion carries with unanimous vote with comments made.
okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, item G. Review and provide direction regarding before and after school club and teen club proposed fee increases for school year 2022-2023.
Thank you, Chair and Board. There's several of us that'll be providing the report tonight. I think the recreation staff is going to cover different elements of it, and then I'm going to make some closing wrap up of staff's report here. So with that, we've got a lot to cover here, and we'll jump into it and look forward to the discussion.
All right.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and members of the board. Tonight, we ask that you review and provide direction regarding before and after school club and teen club fees for the school year 2022-23. Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District provides its before and after school club program on campus at 8 Simi Valley Unified Elementary Schools and at the 3 Simi Unified Middle Schools. We are proud to be part of a larger community of diverse childcare providers throughout our city. The Ymca is the other on-site childcare provider for Simi Unified families. In addition to the on-campus options, several nonprofit organizations provide subsidized programs at their facilities within our community. In addition to the ACES grant, which is offered on 3 different elementary school campuses, that's a grant that provides free childcare to families who qualify at those locations. Faith-based organizations and local businesses provide diverse childcare options in our community as well. And some employers provide support with childcare costs through employer reimbursement programs or discounts as well. In speaking directly to our program, throughout the pandemic, after school club staff have worked diligently to adopt the changing requirements, which we know is kind of a moving target. The 2020-21 school year was transformed to a full day program referred to as PAL, as the district adopted a virtual model and later a limited in-person model for student learning. Enrollment sharply declined due to lack of need for childcare as many families worked from home during this time. The 2021-22 school year returned to in-class instruction with the adaptations that were made from state and county standards. Enrollment did increase from the PAL program as students returned to school campuses. While enrollment has begun to trend upward, the program's total enrollment, which is about 470 students, still falls well short of our peak enrollment prior to COVID. Decreases in enrollment are attributed to parent apprehension, the persistent rise and fall of COVID case numbers, increased opportunities to work from home which kind of lessened the demand for childcare, and permanent change in habits for some families who found other alternatives during the pandemic. The effects of the pandemic continue to heavily impact our programs. In addition to fluctuating enrollment, increased hourly wages have had a dramatic effect. Over the last 3 years, part-time staff have seen a significant increase in hourly wages per the state law and the district's commitment to maintain reasonable pay, while staff have been diligent in minimizing expenditures, particularly in these last 2 years, the cost of goods and services has also continues to rise. We've actually inhibited some of the purchasing that we've done that we would normally do for our program during these last couple of years. A 3% increase for the before and after school club program was done in, as well as a 5% for the teen clubs was implemented in 2019-20 school year. The 2020-21 school year fee structure was based on a full day program, so the statistics for that are a little bit different, but it was a highly subsidized program at the time. We should have been charging upward of $880 a month, and our district manager allowed us to charge $625, and we used that as a subsidy. A 3% increase was implemented for the 2021-22 school year. To give you some numbers, the 2018-19 school year produced revenues of around $2,162,000 with operating costs of about $2.2 million. This resulted in an $84,000, $473 subsidy, and that was at the height of our program. The 2021 school year was impacted by COVID, produced revenues of about $538,000 with operating costs of about $1.6 million. This resulted in about a $1.1 million subsidy. The current 2021-22 school year is expected to produce revenues of $1.3 million with operating costs of around $1.8, which will result in another subsidy of about $520. Despite a steady incline in enrollment, attendance numbers are not expected to match our pre-COVID numbers, which will inevitably produce another year of substantial subsidy for the district. While the programs have seen a modest increase in pricing over the years, the increase has not been enough to offset the increase in hourly wages, goods, and services due to shortages and inflation. The program's most cumbersome direct costs are wages. Part-time staff fee adjustments driven by minimum wage resulted in a 6.7% increase this year for over 40 counselors. Several assistant director positions remain vacant for this school year due to reduced enrollment as well as some cost-saving strategies. Staffing shortages and recruitment continue to be of grave concern for our program. An increase of $30 per month, which equates to about 9%, would maintain the status of the program and allow the program revenues to continue to keep pace with the increasing costs that are caused by these wages and supplies. Management staff strives to lead programs that maintain a reasonable competitive price and allow accessibility to all, but it's also priced to be fiscally responsible and implemented by fairly compensated staff. At this time, I'll pass it over to Zach, who will share a couple other things with regard to a discounted scholarship opportunities.
Thank you, Danielle. Good evening, board. Tonight, I wanted to provide a little framework for our discussion around the possibility of extending our current discount program into a larger discount scholarship program at the 8 schools that we're currently offering after-school care at. As you may know, the before and after school and teen club program continue to offer qualifying low-income families a 20% discount through the district-wide adopted program. Eligibility currently is allowed for families of 4 at 200% of the poverty line, which is roughly about $56,000 a year. And I believe that there are currently about 13 families that are currently taking advantage of this program in the ASC clubs. We would like board direction this evening for an alternative or to modify the current discount program that could offer a greater percentage discount to families that already meet the existing criteria, or to maybe to expand the qualifications so that additional families qualify at the current 20% off discount, or some combination of both of these ideas. Another alternative to consider this evening would be to revise the current discount program into more of a grant scholarship program that would benefit existing participants and new participants. Allocating funds would be awarded to the participants based on predetermined qualifications that are in line with income or poverty level. The grant scholarship program could be developed to have a broader reach by adding additional qualifications, criteria, verification methods, or by allowing additional families to qualify with increased levels of support compared to what's currently provided by the district. We envision that we could achieve these through a budget expenditure of a certain amount if the board wanted to make this available to the program, or to create a cap on the total number of children we could try to serve through the scholarship program. If the board provides some direction to us this evening, staff could further describe the possible scope and parameters and return with a more specific model we could achieve the board's goals with the grant scholarship program. So this evening we've laid out about 7 alternatives. I'm not going to read them in detail. They are in your board packet this evening, but essentially alternative 1 would be to implement a 6% increase, which would raise the fee from $339 to $359 a month. There's some alternate fee increases that were equivalent for the teen clubs and before care program. Alternative 2 would be to implement the 9% increase from $339 a month to $369 a month, and the subsequent increase in the before club and teen club. This is what we feel was consistent with the need to operate the program at the current level and keep pace with the rising wages and supply costs. Alternative 3 is to implement a 3% increase from $339 to $349 a month. This would be consistent with the CPI of about 3%. Alternative 4, implement no increase and maintain the current discount program as is. Alternative 5 would be to somehow decrease fees and maintain the current discount program. Alternative 6, implement a fee structure. And alternative 1, 2, or 3 with some kind of modified discount program. And finally, implement the fee structure in alternative 1, 2, or 3 with a grant scholarship program that I've kind of outlined. This does conclude our report. We're asking the board to review the alternatives and provide direction to staff this evening. With me is Danielle, Richard Lemo, the coordinator specifically in charge of the after-school program, and I would all be available to answer any specific questions you may have about the program. And I believe Dan might have some following comments before we continue this discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, staff and chair and board. As the board's aware, these are some of the tougher issues that we grapple with, and much like the last item relative to tax assessments, now we're talking about fees. And as the board is aware, and for the listening public, sometimes we have difficult decisions when we make these. Generally, when we're talking about fee structures and keeping pace with the cost of doing business, or keeping fees at a low rate, or implementing discount programs, there's broader implications to those decisions. So we're making the decision around the after school club program here, but whatever we decide around those has implications on the broader budget that we have, and also policy choices and priorities that are established by the board. So just wanted to reiterate that, these are tough discussions. Generally, I know the staff doesn't like to raise fees, but at the same time, we're trying to, meet service level demands, keep the quality of the program out. Maybe we can make sure that we can hire staff at appropriate wages and those kind of things. So I just wanted to mention that we understand it's a difficult conversation. We leave it to the board on setting policy and setting priority and laying these out. So relative to that, I wanted to expand a little bit on the discussion regarding alternative 6, either taking our current 20% discount program and potentially modifying that with the goal of expanding the reach of that program in terms of the number of people it may be available to, but also perhaps the actual discount amount, and then also the grant scholarship program. Just wanted the discussion here, I think, was we were hoping on those two things to get input and feedback from the board tonight. So maybe either establish the fees for the overarching program, and then we're hoping to get some input from you guys on alternative 6 and 7. Then taking that input, we bring back some more specificity to what alternative 6 or 7 might look like should the board want to head in that direction. So that concludes my portion, and that concludes staff report. Because we have some new folks online with us tonight, I just wanted to reiterate the process here. Staff provides their report. The board members then take the opportunity to ask any questions they might have, to clarifications, understanding of data. Once the board asks their questions, then we turn it over to public comment and get public input, and then it goes back to the board for deliberation. So just a reminder on the process here. And that concludes staff's report.
All right, are there, yes, Josh?
I will add before anything else. It was short notice, but I did take the liberty to email the principals of the 8 elementary schools involved to see if they would be open to providing any input, either via letter, which I haven't seen yet. So I'd be curious if staff has that, and or if there are any principals or PTA members from any of those schools that did join us this evening for the meeting and might be able to provide specific insight to what it's like at their school and the after school club.
Thank you, Director. We did receive a total of 12 letters. I don't know for sure I don't think there's any principals in here. And I do not know if there's any specifically online this evening with us, but as we go through the public comment, I'm sure hopefully they're here and we'll hear from them. So.
Okay. Any other board questions?
I do have some questions.
Okay.
I heard in the board report, we're currently operating at 8 schools. Is that correct?
8 elementary,
Right.
correct.
And then what's the status of the middle schools?
We're currently at the 3 middle schools, but we do bus the children from Sinaloa over to Hillside. So we're currently on campus at 2, but we provide the service to all 3.
But what happens at Valley View?
Valley View is on campus.
And then what's the total enrollment approximately for our middle schools?
Yeah, Sinaloa currently has 6, which we bus over to Hillside. They have a total of 7, and Valley View has a total of 11 currently. So 24 complete for the teen clubs.
And then my other question is, for the public, when you give input, you can say anything you want, freedom of speech and all, but I'm looking for a specific input so I can inform and make the best decisions possible. grants versus fees. So if you say that it should be affordable, I understand what that means, but I might not understand what you mean. So for the public, if you're telling me you'd like it to be more accessible or affordable, if you just give feedback, do you mean total fees for everyone? Or do you mean grants for those that might not be able to pay otherwise? And then as a part of that also, like I said, you could say anything you want, public comments, but important to me is the quality of our after school clubs. So I'd like feedback on the quality of our after school clubs currently. If anyone's speaking as current experience, like you send your children there or you recently attended yourself, if you could tell us that part too, because that can help inform me to make good decisions.
Okay,
I have a question.
yes.
Josh, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ed. I just had a question for staff. When the report is created, alternatives one through three, we're talking about, well, I'll use alternative 2 since that's the one that says consistent with the need to operate the programs at current levels. When we're saying $30, an increase of $30 a month, how many participants are we basing that total recovery of money from? Are we saying our current number, $30 times 470 current participants? Are we basing it off of somewhere between 500 and 700 of past years with number of participants? I'm just trying to understand the, because that connects to what's the budget deficit that we're trying to address here? What's that number? And yeah.
No, good question. It's a little bit twofold. I will say when we do the budget, we definitely combine all of the clubs together. Richard can speak a little bit on how volume kind of affects that process. But what we do is just kind of look individually at each school as well. So we know by plugging in our current staffing fees, as well as other direct costs that we have, we need approximately 32 students at each club in order to essentially break even. And that's without even some of our indirect costs. So that would strictly be, supplies as well as wages. Many of our schools are not meeting that criteria and or are right on that border. So Richard, can you speak slightly to volume, kind of the difference of how pre-COVID, when we had 700 kids, how that affects as opposed to maybe the volume we have now?
Thank you. Good evening, board. So obviously we've got fixed costs that we'd like to exceed in order to realize the substantial revenue. Obviously, site to site, that looks a little bit different. Our larger sites can eclipse fixed costs and begin to see some revenue based on that volume. There's obvious gradual increase in cost the bigger the site, but the fixed costs, once they're eclipsed, tend to, again, create a scenario where your site can be successful. The biggest thing here is our fixed costs in increasing year to year have increased what that minimum is in order to start realizing revenue. Without getting into specifics, I would say we were pleased that all 8 sites in the past realized some degree of revenue. To echo what Danielle said, that number has decreased significantly because of COVID and because of the increase in costs. So it is a bit of a numbers game, Josh. And I appreciate you, asking, what's it based off of? And to answer your question, it is more of a site-to-site thing, but we are considerate of the total number, both before and after COVID.
If I could add on to that, just in the bigger picture, Director Gray. When we're talking about 9%, we're comparing the revenue we collect with the full cost of the program. So we're kind of saying if we want it to break even, we would need somewhere in the order of 9% to close that gap. What happens is if we don't keep pace with that, and the revenues grow at a separate pace than expenses, that gap continues to grow. So it'll go from 9 to 12 to 16. But that's the baseline, because our budget is built in total around kind of a balanced program or around a certain level of subsidy. That being said, if the board wants to choose to, keep the fees in the after school club lower, that can certainly be accomplished, but that means the subsidy from other parts of the district is increased. whether it be more of the revenue we get from taxes or other programs, instead of it coming from fees, it comes from, say, maybe our general taxes. That's on the revenue side. And then on the expenditure side, if we don't, want to allocate additional revenue to it, then we make choices in other parts of the district budget to trim things back so that we can save money on the expenditure side. So, but basically kind of the baseline is just that our budget's built around certain assumptions around the program, and we're trying to keep pace with the way the budget is currently constructed. And again, the assumption in the budget right now is that we're back at full operations. So that would be those first numbers, kind of the 18-19 numbers. Over the last couple of years, obviously it's been unique times and we've had a lot of impacts, but we're kind of filling that gap right now with some what I'll call savings and one-time revenue. So when we're talking about these fees, we're talking about the overall program, assuming that it was back to normal, but we also recognize that we have somewhat of a hole, so to speak, in our current budget because of the impacts of COVID and enrollment and all of those things.
Okay. As follow-up, would that put the, since there is a alternative of 9%, would that, feel free to correct my math, that puts the hole somewhere between 15 and 20,000 approximately? If we're doing it based on
so if we go back to in the staff report, pre-COVID, we were running at about 91% of the revenue. So our expenditures were exceeding revenues for 9%. That was about $84,000, right? Since that time, the 9%, the gap has grown because we know we've done minimum wage the last 2 years. We've got increase in insurance costs and those things. So I would guess that our hole right now is about 13 and 14%. So it'd be 13% of, say, 2.1 million is how much I would describe the size of that, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. And then my last follow-up question along this, and understanding that the budget process as a whole for the district may be very different than how department by department tries to tackle it. Back in August of 2021, we examined that fee study and we talked about that 91% and all of that. Does this staff report take into account that the board or some members of the board showed regret for increasing the after-school club fees?
And I'm going to ask a question about that too.
Okay, I will defer to Ed because Ed was vocal about those comments from August.
I'm sorry, Director Gray, I didn't understand the question again. If you could clarify.
I'll actually defer the question to Ed, and if I have any follow-up from that, I will.
Right, sure. So I was going to start my question off. My first question follows right into what I understood Josh just saying right now. So I rarely show my cards when I play poker, but I'm going to do it on this one. Well, actually, I should say, unless I don't like someone at the table, if I'm bluffing, I like to rub it in sometimes. But so last year, I had buyer's remorse on a vote that I did on this topic. We kind of compromised on a higher increase and no increase, and I regretted that after I saw the fee study. So, and I would have voted with Josh for no increase having seen the fee study. So my questions are along those lines and keeping that in mind. My first question is just in terms of process, and this also follows from the discussion that we had on the assessment, and in terms of presenting reports that have a little bit of bias built into them. So the staff has recommended as alternative 1, the 6% increase, alternative 2, the 9% increase. You got to go all the way down to alternative 4 before you get no increase at all. How did the staff decide to rank those preferences in that order? And any one of the 4 of you can answer that.
So if you'll notice, there is no staff recommendation. So if you want to assume the staff recommendation is number 1, I guess you can do that. But these are just in random order. Clearly, staff has identified them as our recommendation is relative to the increasing cost and relative to trying to keep that the program where it was. That being said, we have no particular recommendation tonight. So I think in terms of the recommendation, we've in the last few years, and Danielle and Richard, correct me where I'm wrong, we've kind of skipped on some CPIs. And then also I think the 9% is tied to reflecting what increased costs we have had in the program. So between the 6.7% increased staffing costs plus the increase in supplies and other things, the growth in cost in the program has been 9%. So now that does tie to what our subsidy is. So I don't know, there's no.
You understand, I want to go on to my real questions, but just you do understand though the concern that when something's listed as the first and second alternative, how it's sort of a hint to the board, this is kind of what we want you to do. You understand how it could be taken that way,
right? So
why not start with no increase?
Yeah, so generally staff makes recommendations. So, and we're, out of all those choices, that's what our role is, to make recommendations. So I think our recommendations are geared toward keeping the program whole and keeping the quality up, recognizing the increased costs. So that's what our role is, to make recommendations. If we don't want to do that, we can. If we can randomly, we can mix all these alternatives up and number them any way we want, but generally we try to give recommendations.
Essentially, you ranked them as what the recommendation would be. I'm just, that's all I'm saying.
No, we rank them based on what we think is needed to sustain the program.
Okay, so my next question is, in light of the fact, and forgetting what the numbers of the vote were a year ago, but and as Josh was saying, in terms of the discussion on the fee study and all that, I just want to make clear, the staff does have an understanding how we have an interest in, our interest with the after school clubs is not necessarily profit, not necessarily breaking even, but doing our part to take care of those who desire or need, in both situations, the after school clubs. It's certainly, at least with a couple, and I would say, wherever the board goes down in terms of whether to increase or how much to increase, I certainly think it's the sentiment of at least the majority of the board. So was that taken into account in these alternatives and the things you're recommending?
Not necessarily. Like I said, we're tying our recommended increases around the finances and how to sustain the program and deliver the quality of service. So it's a recommendation relative to that. The policy comes in when you guys are deliberating it here tonight. So we're making professional staff recommendations based on keeping the finances in check and also keeping the quality of the program in check. So that's just the administrative side of the coin. The other side of the coin is policy, and that's, we fully respect and want you guys to bring the policy perspective to the total conversation so that we can make the best decision for the community.
Well, okay, but there was a policy perspective given when we discussed the fee study and even when we discussed the fees last year. But let me move on to my last question. I'm trying to understand from an economic standpoint, and it's 39 years ago since I graduated with my economics degree from CSUN, but help me understand how with the economic sense of raising fees at a time when attendance is declining and how that's going to give incentive for people to want to take advantage of our after school clubs.
Certainly that's a perspective and a point of view, and we understand that point of view. All we're looking at is there are certain things that we have that we can't control. Minimum wage is mandated. That's a cost that has increased on us. The cost of utilities and our insurance have increased. So I understand the economic environment we're in, but at the same time, we're subject to those costs, and those we have to pay out when we run a program. So, we look at those things and we're saying those are things we have. Now, relative to the economy and the impact that it has on the residents or the constituents, Yeah, we certainly understand that. Still doesn't change the fact that we have costs that have increased on us relative to, the total, I guess. So
I guess, how is increasing fees gonna make people want to go to our after-school clubs when there's less people going to our after-school clubs as it is anyway?
Director O'Brien, when I have a word at some time?
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Just so it's clear, that was a question.
I can slightly answer that in that we don't believe that it's strictly the fees that are inhibiting people from joining the program. We think that there's been a cultural shift where we've noticed a lot of families that we've reached out to who were in our program prior are now working from home. So they no longer need the care, that they pick up their kids after school and they're home with them while working. So I don't think all of our lack of attendance or decreased enrollment is due to the fee structure by any means. I do think there's been a cultural shift. And we're trying to kind of accommodate and address for that as well. And just back to Josh, you had a question right before we sent it over to Ed. I just wanted to clarify that when looking at the individual budgets, we've identified that at a 9% increase, 7 of the 11 clubs would be at a quote unquote break even and or already be subsidized. So just to kind of put a different perspective on it.
Sorry, just to follow up on that. So, 4 of the 11 would be subsidized?
7 of the 11.
7 of the 11? Do we know what percent?
And that includes the teen clubs, I apologize. Yeah.
Do we know on average what the subsidy is for those?
I can try to break it down really quick by school. So we have about 2 schools that would be highly subsidized, 1 or 2 that would kind of fall on the brim, and then our teen clubs are all subsidized at the moment.
Would you could you, I know as an example, it was 9% as an average a few years ago. When you're saying high, would you say like teens, or like, are we talking, I'm just curious.
Yeah, so all of our teen clubs, I mean, just with, 6 or 7 people in attendance, those are already subsidized programs. And they have a lower fee structure, obviously, than the after school clubs because our ratios tend to be higher. But again, that's kind of based on the volume model that Richard was describing earlier, which we don't have at this time. And then as far as the after school club, we've got a couple that kind of fall below that quote unquote 32 people brim, which is sort of that kind of break even if we're to wrap our brain kind of around that concept. So we've got 2 schools that are functioning at about 20 kids. We've got a couple schools that are functioning at 30, 40, and then we kind of jump and we've got some schools in that 60, 70 range.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Director Freeman, you had a question.
Yes. What we have for us is a decision on whether and by how much we want to subsidize this program and what our recovery costs should be for the program. We've had a big shift, as was noted by staff. But if I look at the alternatives, my goal would be to have more, if as necessary, more scholarships or subsidized as needed, and keep our market rate competitive and bring in at least revenue that helps balance and pay for the program itself. I think we'll always have, perhaps, in the way the world is today, be subsidizing the after-school program until things really turn around and are in full bore and people are back in school and back at work, if that ever happens. But the thing is, I was a single mom for a long time, so I'm going to get elementary. I break it down in per week. What's it going to cost me per week? For instance, on alternative 3, I mean, it's not much on a weekly basis. And I could absorb that as a working mother, probably. Probably for the alternative 1, maybe a little more difficult at $5 a week. But at the same time, if I was qualified, I want that scholarship or alternate program available to me. And in order to have those alternate programs, we need to have people paying market rate, so to speak. And there are, as was noted in the staff report, there are multiple places for kids to go that are different types of programs. And we feel one of those needs, but there are programs that are less expensive that other programs can go to. But we're faced with the reality of increased insurance, increased salaries, costs of operation. And so our job tonight is to
Dr.
find,
Friedman, can I break in for a second?
yeah,
We're starting to discuss policy, and we're supposed to have public comment before we discuss policy.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, do you mind holding on until after?
No, I just think that's where we are, and I'll
Okay.
wait until later.
Okay, thank you. I do actually have a couple of questions myself. First of all, how do our fees compare with YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah, those are great questions. I actually have that data. So the Boys and Girls Club, as you know, is a nonprofit organization. Their fees are at about $275 a month, which is comparable to our current discounted rate. So our current discounted rate for those who qualify is $271 a month. So we're kind of right in that brim.
Okay.
YMCA, who is kind of the other on-campus alternative. So we're basically at half of the schools there at half. They do charge $115 a week, which equates to $460 a month.
Okay.
And that's our current fee structure. We don't have next year's yet.
Just
Okay,
to piggyback on those comments from Danielle, just to give a little bit of kind of industry insight to hopefully draw a parallel for the board. I would say our operation most closely resembles that of the YMCA currently, as far as staffing ratios, quality of programs, so on and so forth. While I don't want to speak specifically to how the Boys and Girls Club is run, the staffing ratios tend to be slightly less than what we would do. And obviously they work on more of a nationally subsidized budget as well. So the budget structure is a little bit different, but hopefully that draws a little bit of a parallel of competing programs in the area and how they are similar and dissimilar from what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our program is on a 1-to-10 ratio, for example, whereas the others we found have been about a 1-to-15 or even 1-to-20.
Okay, so we're kind of, basically what I'm hearing is that we're kind of like right in the neighborhood of YMCA and Boys and Girls Clubs, but our programs are a teeny bit different, and we have our teacher to student ratio is better.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The other question I had was, if we did, let's take the after school clubs and teen clubs as and before school, that whole pod of clubs, and isolate them. If we did not, if we left the fees the same way, could we come up with like several specific things that would have to be altered or got eliminated as a result in order to keep quality, keep it at the same ratio of subsidizing? Does that my question make sense?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to tackle the first leg of that and then let Danielle piggyback there.
Okay.
Obviously, there are oftentimes things that will come up that would be maybe outside of budget purchases that we like to put together for the clubs to enhance the experience,
Okay.
Whether they be multimedia centers at each site, or making sure that we've got additional Chromebooks should the necessity be there for homework. Things that may come up that maybe we don't necessarily account for in the beginning of the year. Obviously, making sure that you've got a little bit of extra budget for that is always nice. Salary is an ongoing, or payroll cost is an ongoing discussion. Just a very, very quick note on that. Right now, we've got at a larger site, an assistant director and a director, and every other staff is a staff that is coming in at minimum wage. So you've got 2 leadership staff that we try to have there at all times, but the vast majority of staff that are there playing with games and interacting with kids are entry-level staff. One thing that we may see happen, and we're seeing it happen in the current economic climate, is that we're seeing minimum wage go up, but that's also driving up those secondary positions that were once a little bit more aligned with what that counselor rate would be. The fear is that we're going to start to lose some of our entry-level staff because other positions that we would originally label to be competing are now paying significantly more. Not suggesting that the decision tonight is going to necessarily alter the part-time wage, but it obviously allows that discussion to perpetuate itself down the line.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and to piggyback a little bit on that, as well as with the staffing, we've also had some vacancies with our assistant director position. So usually the directors and assistants kind of they kind of cross paths, if you will, with regard to their schedule to make sure that we always have that kind of that upper level managerial staff there. What it does at the smaller sites too is it put directors and assistants in ratio. So we don't like to do that because if there's a problem, they can't step aside to talk to a parent or to plan the program. So they're now in ratio, like Richard said, watching the kids and kind of interacting in that capacity. So that could be an effect as well, that they're losing kind of that that opportunity to not be within ratio and to do the tasks that we've assigned them as well.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions from the board members? Okay, let's open it up to public comment. Dan, you want to take that over?
Sure. I'm just going to go down the list here of participants. First on the list is Joe Ayala.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good evening, board. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I rise in opposition to this, to increasing the fees in our after-school program. As a parent of young children here in Simi who have used those programs in the past, I think the fees are high enough already, and raising them would create a greater hardship to many working families in the city. I urge the board to keep the fees the same, and if possible, use 4 or 5, item 4 or 5 as an alternative. I did have a question on the alternative funding and what other ways, what other mechanisms could there be to help continue funding these programs. And I think Director Abel said something earlier about how much are we taxing the golf
I
courses?
love the doctor thing. I'll take that anytime.
Well, I'm going to give you got a promotion, Director Abel. But I wanted to just say, I play golf. I go to the driving range, and I would not mind getting taxed a little bit more there, knowing that it was going to go towards helping the kids of that are in need in the city. So if there is another way of moving the funds, so to speak, and helping our those underserved and especially those kids in need here in Simi Valley, I would encourage the board to look at those alternatives.
Thank you, Joe. April Amante.
Yes, hi. Thank you for letting me speak. I just want to kind of echo in a way what Joe Ayala just said. But yeah, these clubs are so important. And by the way, I grew up in Simi Valley. I went to Vista, Hillside, and Royal, and then now I'm currently getting my doctorate at UC Santa Barbara. But I have friends who have kids in the Simi Valley public schools, and so that's a close issue to me. And I attended clubs, and they're integral for working families who need childcare after school. It's so important. And these costs can be a huge financial burden for these families that rely on this care. And it does, at the end of the day, I understand the dilemma here between financial and principle, but at the end of the day, it is kind of a matter of what do you feel is important, and this kind of contributes, raising rates more than they already are, even though in my opinion they already are too high. Raising rates just contributes to the inequity in the system, and giving those with privilege and less marginalized identities more opportunity to attend these programs. It just kind of contributes to that systemic those systemic issues that people always talk about. Why did certain people get more opportunities than others? Well, this is one example of that. So I just wanted to hop on and give my opinion on this, and thank you for hearing me.
Dan, I know you're going down the list, and April, thanks for speaking. But before we go to the next speaker, I had asked for input on total fees versus our grant program expanding. If any other speakers feel like addressing that, that'd be good too. April, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I appreciate you cutting and waiting for your turn to speak tonight. I know it's a long meeting.
No, I was done. Thank you. No worries.
Thank you, Chair. If I could also, Director Gray, we had talked about making some opening comments to the speakers.
Forgot about that,
So
yeah.
I meant to do that before we got started. So I don't know if you want to do that, Josh, now or continue with the speakers.
Yeah, apologies, we meant to do that.
I think we can continue. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm actually not sure what you're alluding to. And what
we had discussed, you had said you had invited some folks to speak tonight. And you wanted to recognize that we had invited some particular individuals to speak to the topic, and you wanted to make some comment about that.
Yeah, I apologize if there is anyone on here. Please do speak up. But I tried to cross-reference names, and I could have missed any, but I don't see any principals of schools.
Oh, that's okay. You already made that statement. Okay, I got it. I apologize. So yeah,
no worries.
I already said that. So okay, I just want to make sure we covered that. Next up, I've got, and again, I'm listing the names here. If you don't want to speak, just say that. Cassandra Douglas.
Hello, my name is Cassandra Douglas. I'm a single working mother here in Simi Valley, born and raised in Simi Valley. I will start off by saying I'm extremely fortunate to benefit from the after school program that's at Parkview through Boys and Girls Club, which means I have the ability to send my kids to after school program at their own school. And because of it being a Title I school, and also because of my income, it's a free program. I am calling in to request that either the grant that's available for Simi Valley Park, or sorry, for the Park and Recs program, after school program, either be extended. Looking at the low income requirements, it really is unbalanced. I understand that there's a need for extremely low or acutely low, but there's those who are in the middle between low, very low, who have jobs, but don't meet the requirements for the discount program. So a program like was provided through the Park and Recs Club is something I myself could not afford. I couldn't even afford after school program if I didn't have what's available to me at my children's school. So if the fees are going to stay the same or increase, I'd also suggest that perhaps the low income guidelines be based off of what the district that the parks serve, as opposed to Ventura County as a whole, because we know being low income in Simi Valley is different than being low income in Oxnard or Port Hueneme. Our income difference, our average median income is a bit different here in Simi Valley than it is in other areas. The program you have is wonderful. I wish I can afford it. Again, I'm fortunate. My kids' school has it. If I didn't have that, I don't know what I would do. And I know that there's plenty of other parents who are not fortunate enough to have the opportunity that I have. But I just want to express my opinion on that. So I appreciate your time.
What was the name of the current speaker?
Cassandra Douglas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to mention, if you guys are associated with a particular club, meaning the folks that are speaking, it's helpful for us to understand which club you're associated with. Next, I have Rebecca. That's just a yep.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Well, good evening to all the board members. I think this is the first meeting I'm attending for, well, actually I attended one other one, but I'm familiar with the Park District, so I'm happy to be speaking tonight and to attend, at least my second meeting. It's definitely been very interesting listening to just the report itself regarding this issue. I'm someone that was, very involved and has been serviced by Park District programs in the past. So I wanted to kind of speak on something that was brought up regarding affordability. I know when Director Dennert was providing instructions on public comments, you mentioned affordability. So I did want to bring that up because I think it's important. It's something important for the board members to understand if they themselves have never experienced this, but as someone who has been serviced by programs through the park district, this is a public entity, offering after school programs at public schools. I think it's a really important reminder to everyone. I think subsidizing this program is a worthwhile investment. Putting forth a quality program that invests in children and working parents, as well as those that are providing care, is worth subsidizing. I think that's really important that you guys recognize that is something that's worth subsidizing. My request is that we implement no fee increase. And in reading the report, there was something that I really liked, and there was something that I felt was missing. One thing that I really liked was the option for adopting a grant scholarship program. I think based on the description, it looked like in going that way, a lot more people could benefit from the program and the discounts, as well as any future individuals that would want to enroll their children in the program could benefit. So I think that's something worth exploring. So the request would be to implement no fee increase, and additionally to adopt a grant or scholarship program along with that. And one thing that was missing and was kind of brought up a little bit was, so what happens with this deficit? What other source of revenue can be used to subsidize, or will be used to subsidize the program if a fee increase is not implemented? I think that's something that I didn't see in the report. I don't know if it was previously discussed, but something that is important, talking about, what other options besides just increasing, or the first option to increase the fees, what is available? Are there grants that are available for funding? Those things I'd like to see are important for us to consider before just, making a decision on whether we should implement a fee increase or not. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Before we go on to the next speaker, Rebecca, I want to thank you for coming out to the Martin Luther King Day of Service and cleaning up Hummingbird Trail with us. I appreciate that.
Next, I have Roop Mann, or Mon.
Mon, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. I am at the gym, but I found a staircase to hide in because I anticipated going next. So I'm excited to be here. This is my first meeting as well. It's interesting to see everything you guys are talking about. I'm new to civic engagement, so I plan to be at more meetings and also spread the word about what Parks and Rec is doing. I was here today specifically, though, to speak on the after-school club price increase, and I'm here to just ask that we don't increase the prices. I think it was Mr. Denner, I'm not sure if I'm getting this wrong. If I am, I'm apologizing. Was speaking about COVID and, would a price increase, kind of deter people from coming to these after-school clubs? I would argue yes, because
That
I think,
was actually Dr.
the people
Owl.
who really need. I'm so sorry about that, Dr. Oglin. I'm on my phone, so excuse me, but I would argue that because of COVID, the people that kind of need childcare right now are the people that are working. I am privileged enough to where I still work from home. I know a lot of other people do, but there are a lot of people who do have to go to their jobs, work late hours, and they need that, that they're relying on that after school care, for that. And I think a lot of those people are working class people. I don't want to make any generalizations, but I just think, I kind of am making a generalization there. And I think I think I'm right on this one. It was Mr. Dennett that was asking about like affordability as in total costs or grants. I would argue for both. I think in my personal opinion, the total cost should be decreased if possible. And I also think more grants for those who are low in middle class would be able to, have access to this childcare. I was looking at the income margins, and they do seem, concerning to me. I know there are a lot more people who need childcare that don't don't fall into that low income category just based off of you know, the bar is set by the county and it's different everywhere. So I think that grants would be helpful. And yeah, I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. I'm kind of scrambled right now, but I think I covered mostly everything. I mean, overall, a price decrease would be great, but you know, as of tonight, I would you know, ask you guys to just vote on not increasing the price for now. I think a lot of people are still in hard times. You know, we are 2 years into this pandemic, but seems like little to nothing has changed. So, thank you guys.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not seeing any more. The other names here as staff for other reasons. So I'd ask at this point, is there anybody else who wants to speak to the topic? Anybody else that would like to speak? Okay, Chair, if I could, we did receive the letters earlier that were distributed to the board. I've got 3. If it's okay with the board, I'll read the comments for the board that were received in writing. The first is from Renee Frazier. Please don't raise the after-school club fees for children now. It's already quite expensive, especially for poor children. I know that bureaucracies love to hoard money for leaner times, but please spend any money available to keep these fees as low as possible. Are there scholarships available to low-income families? ? That would be one way to help, but even for working class families, $300 a month is a hardship. Very truly yours, Renee Frazier. The second one I have is from Janice K. Dear RSRPD board members, I am a longtime resident of Simi Valley and have raised 2 kids here. I am writing with regards to agenda item 9G. RSRPD has long been a staple in the community, synonymous with affordable activities for the whole family. I have been friends with many parents who use the ASC. Because of this, I have seen firsthand the need for affordable and safe after-school club options for working families. For that, I am thankful you provide this service. While I understand the reasons for increasing fees, I feel like at this time, increasing the fees and adding burden to families who are dealing with increased gas prices, increased food prices, and more without the increase of income is detrimental to them and the kids. We need to find other ways to offset the cost. Grants and reallocations of RSRPD budget should be first looked into. Please vote no on raising fees. And the final email comment is from Ruth Wavenos. Dear board members, please do not raise the after-school club fees. It is the reason that my children did not attend public elementary schools here in Simi Valley. I could not afford to pay the before school and after school club fees to send my kids to public schools here. It was actually cheaper for me to send my kids to private school than to send them here, and we are a 2-income earning household. I can't imagine how much harder it is for single parents struggling to make ends meet. The enrollment at our local public schools is already expected to drop, and this will not help our local school district at all. In addition, many of our teachers, like myself, who need this before and after school care simply can't afford this additional cost when wages have remained stagnant in comparison to the huge rise of inflation. Thank you, Ruth Wavenos. That concludes those written comments. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Let us proceed to discuss policy here. I have a suggestion. Now we're talking about scholarship programs, and a lot of the commenters talked about, you know, providing like scholarships for lower income people. Should we brainstorm about ways of fundraising for that kind of an arrangement? For example, maybe I was thinking maybe we could have, somebody mentioned this last time this came up, having a raffle, you know, buy a raffle ticket, and if you win the ticket, you get a month of free childcare, and all proceeds go to the scholarship program for the low-income families. Would that be doable?
Kate, I'm open to the idea of whatever number that we might set aside for our scholarship program.
Yeah.
And say that's the floor, and then whatever we fundraise from donations from the public.
Yeah.
Spans that floor. So if we say we could fund from 13 to 30 families currently, well, if the community sees a real need and wants to invest then maybe we could accept donations to get that number, whatever we can afford to subsidize to get that number higher.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with that. Have a set amount that we cover, and then anything above that from fundraising, raffle tickets, something like that. Any other comments? That's just a thought. I threw it up there for consideration. So that did come up earlier. Yes, Josh.
Thank you, Chair. I know I've spoken to the, as a board member on this topic before, but I figured I'll just reiterate my current thoughts and my thought process going through this. I think my preferences, I think I prioritize the grants and scholarships over anything else. I think that can make the most significant difference. That, talking with staff about the budget, while I've spoken previously, I'd love to be able to, take from our fee study, take a 9% subsidy, and I morally would prefer inversing those numbers and making it 91% subsidized and have a fantastic program. That's really hard in this. It is an expensive program. But knowing that, we could spend $200,000 on decreasing the overall fees, and knowing that unfortunately it would be fairly a minute difference by cutting the fees across the board for everybody, that it would be fairly minimal. I do think that's where my prioritization of we should provide significant grants, scholarships to certain individuals as a floor. And then I do love the idea of, trying to encourage a raffle or other community efforts for grants, whatever we can do to then increase the number of families we can subsidize. For anybody not familiar, I just want to reemphasize, this is a personal thing to me. I, had a mom on a teacher's salary who, I ended up being the kid who was stuck in the middle between, parents who were able to afford after school care and not being quite, at the level where we could qualify for aid. And speaking frankly, that's a pretty horrible place to be as a kid, to be stuck in the middle and have, friends who participate, knowing friends who are close enough to their home and have an elderly care member there where they can go someplace after school, and you're just kind of stuck in the middle and there's no clear solution, and knowing that it's always a burden for your parents of knowing where you're going to be after school. And just on the note of talking about, competing with YMCA or other programs, other nonprofits, those programs are great. And, I would do nothing to discourage them, but we are a special district and local government, and we have a set mission that, while I think it's helpful to compare, I don't think it's a one-for-one comparison to judge RSRPD off of what YMCA or Boys and Girls Club does. We have, I'm going to be cheesy here and reference the mission statement of promoting a healthy lifestyle through recreational activities and amenities. And I would definitely qualify After School Club as one of those, that, we should be trying to help everybody as much as we can, and not necessarily be overly worried with competing and being competitive with other nonprofits. I will say, to the benefit of staff, I think we run an excellent program, and the staff are consistently praised when I'm going about the community. It's a wonderful program. Nowhere in these, in my desire to not increase fees or increase scholarships, is a condemnation that I want cuts on our programs. Ideally, I'd like a lot more of our budget to go towards that, to enhance the experience and make our programs that much better. And then I also think, on top of dedicating some flat amount of money towards grants, we should also look at if contributing additional dollars to the advertising of our programs in the schools that we do have, and try to get those, those base numbers up of, I don't want to subsidize programs sheerly off of the fact that they don't have enough students participating. I'd rather subsidize it to make sure, families can afford to go, rather than just because we don't have enough students participating. And then I just want to add in one more thing. I think it's great that in the past year, the board didn't raise fees on youth sports leagues, that we didn't increase those fees. But I just want to emphasize that that's an elective. It's a great elective. I'm happy that we support youth sports and great activities, but I would see that as an elective, where I'd see after school club and where kids going to be after school as a lot more of a necessity. And when you're talking about community safety and great upbringing of kids, I think it takes a greater priority over, an elective sport. That concludes my current comments.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll go next.
Yeah.
I start with my values for this, which is Simi Valley should be a place for families. We know that they struggle with a large employer and other issues, but traditionally, and I think going forward, we should be a place for families, and that includes young families with children. And that means that all of us might be contributing towards that, because we know that for the vitality of our community, we need these programs for children. So even if our children aren't directly in a club, it's our community saying that this is something that we need. When I speak to many people, they don't really quite understand our after school club. They sometimes think it's just for children that need childcare. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's also with someone that values the quality of the program, that not just the children being babysat, but the recreational activities they do, sometimes help with homework, the bonding that they do with other kids there. So I have heard from the community that they like our after school clubs, and they want to make sure that the maximum amount of kids could benefit from them. And my other value to that is help those that are needed and concentrate our help there. So if you're asking me between a total club fee versus helping more children that need it, I'm fine if you're asking me as a family to pay more so that more children could benefit. So I'd be against cutting the current fee at the expense of not keeping the fee and putting more of that money into the children that need it the most, that wouldn't otherwise attend. I did hear Ed mentioned that one of the reasons that people might not come back is price. And I'm not denying that. That is possibly one of the reasons. And I think another part of that, though, is quality. Like if you told me that any of these suggestions was going to lower the quality of our after school clubs, then I'm against them. So if it was, oh, well, we could cut the fees or not increase them, but we're going to increase the staffing ratio, I don't like that idea. I don't want to decrease the quality of our clubs. So that would mean that, as we discussed, that I would be more open to subsidizing more. If I heard other board members saying that there's other things that we will cut to make room for this in the budget, if there's something specific that they'd mentioned that they would do to do that, or something else that they would raise the fee on something else to get towards that. Most of the time we're talking about shifting the cost. So we're just shifting the cost, but someone's going to pay that cost. So whether it comes out of the assessment or we do less maintenance, but that's just shifting the cost. I want to bend the cost, and I don't think we've done a good enough job at that. And specifically, Josh, I had sent you an article about it. I know that we'll look into that, but there's a new governor's program that's going to pay for tuition for college students, part of their tuition, if they volunteer. So it's not exactly volunteering because they're going to get paid. But if we don't want to raise fees and we want to subsidize more, but we don't seriously look into that, then we're just shifting cost. Now, if we look into it and it doesn't work, that's the way it works, or sometimes it will work. But I want to do a better job as a board, not just saying staff, get it done, but staff, let's work together on bending the cost. As a part of that, we're not paying our after school club workers enough now. So if this is at the expense of them getting a needed raise, well, that's not a good idea. That's not helping students. It's not helping families, because if most of them are getting minimum wage or close to it, that's not fair to the workers. There's not people signing up to volunteer often there. And I would think if we would visit with our workers and listen to them more and understand their lives and how they struggle with it, and some of them have a couple jobs there, then we would do a better job of thinking how we're going to fund them being paid more fairly. And it's not just being kind and paying them what they're worth, but that leads to shortages. As we mentioned, we have a staffing shortage. So we're cutting the fees and subsidizing more, which those are good things to do. at the expense of a staffing ratio, of rushing around, of having, instead of the quality program that we've offered in the past, having one person watch as many children as possible. I dislike that part too. So I do want to just acknowledge our hard workers in the after school clubs. And if they're hearing any of this message, that means, well, we're going to keep the cost low at their expense. That's not good, and it's not going to help any of those involved. I would like to survey the families on the different questions, including the cost and quality. And we could expand that not just to our families that currently participate, although I'd like it to be directed mostly towards them. But we could have that data and say, well, what are you looking for? Like, is it a few dollars less and you'd come? Or is it a subsidy and you would come? Or is it a particular quality that you're looking for in an after school club? As an example, as a dad myself, my concern when my children went to the after school club was obviously expense, but quality. I got to know the after school club directors and their qualifications, and I was very impressed. We have a good staff there. I wasn't going to leave my children there just to be babysat. And my concern was if I had to work late, I'd pick them up at 5 or 6, and then they have homework. That's hard. So that's what I mean by that survey, to understand, is that my perspective or many families? Like, what's the balance between education and recreation that they're looking for? Josh, you had mentioned like reaching out to others. I did some of that, talking to people involved. Everyone, you could join every PTA. They have a program where you could become a member of every PTA. That's pretty awesome. And I do encourage our fellow board members, as we inform our decisions on how to bend the cost, to visit with our after school club workers, visit our after school clubs, and be familiar with that. I disagree about sports. I don't see that as an elective because that's physical and mental health. So our after school clubs do offer some sports, but some of our children are making the choice between their families, between sports and after school, and both are childcare. Now, the hard part is getting your kids to sports, but one of the reasons some people don't enroll is if sports starts at 4, then it's really expensive to leave your child there just till 4. But if you're getting the same fee till 6 o'clock, that's a little bit different. So that goes back to my value, though, which is Same Valley needs to be a place for children. And that means children need to play. They need to be in sports. So I don't see, when I said shift the cost, I don't want to shift that cost to sports fees. That's my personal choice on that. So going back to that first part, I'm really open to the discussion of supporting the families that need it most. Cassandra, you had mentioned making sure we're doing the math correctly. So Dan, you had heard her suggestion about just when we bring that back up to make sure we're including Simi Valley numbers, because if it's more expensive to live here, I could see how poverty needs to be adjusted to reflect that. And Rebecca, I really like that you mentioned this is an investment, because it is an investment in the future. And I also heard you mention quality, because we need those quality clubs. So with that in mind, Josh, I know that you have strong feelings on this and put some work into reaching out to people and understanding it more. Not about the subsidy, because I want to discuss that and maybe have 2 separate motions. But I wasn't clear on what your thoughts were on fees separately than subsidies or scholarships.
Sorry, can you reframe that question? You want my thoughts on?
Yeah, not on the subsidy or the scholarship program, but on the fees, because in my mind that might go first, because if you said you want to decrease fees, then there might not be as much money for subsidies. So if you said you want to increase them really high, well, we might need more subsidies. And if you said you want to keep them the same, then maybe that's a more moderate approach on how many subsidies we can afford or the level.
Sure. So my comments initially, I was trying to emphasize that I would prioritize the grants and scholarships over a broad decrease in fees. I was talking about my values and what I'd like to see. If we had an incredible amount of money and it wasn't a big deal, yeah, of course, I'd like to do across the board cuts of the prices. Examining the numbers and looking at that, I don't think a decrease of fees is the smart way to go when we're talking about subsidizing the program. I'd like to see no fee increase. That's my preference. And if we're doing 2 different motions, I would prefer to do a motion on a grant scholarship program with a board preference around, a certain number or the intent of, helping so many different families, I'd rather vote on that first and see that in my personal preference, and see that either passes. And then I think I would examine, if I think it's worth, a 3% fee increase if we're making a significant impact on, helping the people who need it most. So I wouldn't feel comfortable voting in favor of any fee increase. My preference is no fee increase at all. I would vote no on any fee increase until we voted in the affirmative to see a grant program.
So Josh, would that mean if there was a significant grant program, you'd be open to 3%?
I would be. I'm not going to be happy about it, but I'm also aware, I'd rather that 3% cover some of the budget. I think the families who tend to participate now and pay the full fee are, able to bear the burden a lot more than the families who could use the help. I understand that's kind of pushing the burden around and kind of shifting who pays it, as we've talked about. But I think, between two evils, I would help more people who need the help and save their financial burden. But I will say my preference is to vote on a scholarship program first and see that can be a reality.
Brian, I love hearing you guys chat, but can we maybe, I'd like to say something, and maybe the other board members would too. I think that's great and everything, but is that all right?
Yes, please. That's all right.
All right. So I'm probably going to leave out some of the things I wanted to say. I want to start off just by making, I think everybody here probably knows this, or well, most people probably do. I don't know if everyone on the call knows this. I'm first and foremost a fiscal conservative, and that's where I start off. But second, as a park board member, we all have our priorities, and this is really along the lines of Josh to some extent and Brian to an even greater extent. My priority here as a park district is for our youth, and that's always where I'm going to look first. So I'm going to address those things. I do want to address just several of the audience comments. As Brian said, first of all, I believe it was Rebecca, this is about our future, and our youth is our future. And I come from that standpoint and looking at this. April, I agree with some of the things you said, but I do want to make it clear so that nothing's misunderstood. I don't agree with the analysis. I actually frown upon the analysis that in terms of the word privilege. I think this has nothing to do with that. It does have to do with people who are economically disadvantaged to some extent, and that I do consider in my decision making. Joe, if we sat down and talked, I think we'd probably disagree on most issues, but I thought your analysis of this one was excellent, and it's kind of the way I see this issue. So just so that we're clear and transparent here, yes, the after-school clubs are subsidized, but in comparison, both in terms of what they provide for our youth, what they provide for our future, and some of the other things the Park District provides, they are not substantially subsidized. They are subsidized to a small extent, and we can't ignore that. So we shouldn't get carried away with the idea that the after-school clubs are substantially subsidized. That is not accurate. They are not substantially subsidized, and that became clear when we had our fee study discussion several months ago. So we shouldn't be operating under that notion, because that is not the way it is. They are subsidized to a small extent. So it's not like this is some great subsidy issue that we have here when it comes to the after-school clubs, and everybody should be aware of that. So I don't even feel like I'm deviating from my being fiscally responsible or fiscally conservative when I say that. I do think, and I agree with the analysis of Brian and Josh. My first priority would be some sort of discount or scholarship program. I think that's where the priority should be. In terms of taking 2 votes, that's fine. But until I'm clear on what that's going to entail, and until I'm clear that I'm comfortable with what that program is, I would not be comfortable until that time to go along with any sort of fee increase at this point. I kind of felt like I got duped last year into voting for one, and I don't know that I'm comfortable doing that again. I certainly, alternative 1 and alternative 2 are not even in the ballpark for me. Let's put it that way. So that's my analysis of that. And I do want to say, again, with first of all, Director Freeman's analysis, I understand it. I agree with it. I think it's economically sound. Other than the fact that we need to look at, I sometimes wish it was as fiscally conservative on some other issues like taxation, but I do think it's economically sound. But again, we are a policy making body, and for me, my policy is always going to be in favor of our youth and our future over disposable income type activities, such as golf, such as having, I'm sorry, Josh, but having weddings at Strathern. And there's others as well. Those are the 2 biggies I mentioned. But if you go through the budget, there's others as well. There's other places that we can generate income, and it doesn't involve raising assessments or raising taxes. There's other places that we can generate income. And especially when you're considering something like after school clubs that are not substantially subsidized. Where I did want to say that I agree with Brian is I equate youth sports and after school clubs the same thing. They're for our youth, they're for our future. They're both important. I can't put one's importance over the other. They're probably the 2 most important things that we do here as a park district. The after school clubs for the reasons we're discussing tonight, the youth sports for the reasons Brian mentioned, the mental, the physical health, the social activity. There's just so many aspects of our youth sports. So I can't rank one over the other. I prioritize both, and that's the way I approach this issue. So those are my comments.
Director Freeman, do you have any comments?
Thank you. Yes, I do. I agree that our youth are very important, and that's what the whole program of the Park District is about, is a healthy community, healthy neighborhood, healthy kids, healthy adults. But we also need a healthy district. And the after-school program provides an extremely beneficial opportunity for parents. And I would like to, the part in agreement would be to look into a scholarship program or a greater advertising of the availability of the subsidized programs. I'm not sure that parents are aware of it. I mean, they get a lot of information from the school district, and the kids toss the papers and so on. So I'm not sure that parents are as aware that that is available to them. So, but on the other hand, I would like to point out the second paragraph in the staff report, which shows that the subsidy this year was $519,000, and I consider that substantial. And maybe that's a different perspective, but to me, that is a substantial amount of money. And how to balance the providing of service and at the same time maintain the quality of the program. And I believe our program is very good. When I listen to all the comments, I would like to see the scholarship program and a broader proposal to educate the parents on the subsidy available. But I also would go for the 3% alternative 3, because that's $2.50 a month, a week, or $3 a month. You know, I mean, the amount is minimal. but it does a lot cumulatively for our budget and for the program. And if we continually delay implementing increases over the years, then when we do have to make the increase, it's going to be even more substantial, which will be more difficult for people to accept. If we do it gradually, people can absorb that. I go back to, as an example, when the city didn't raise the sewer fees for 5 or 6 years. And then when they had to do it, it was a huge amount, so that there was a backlash. So if you do it gradually, it can be absorbed. So I think we have two things to look at here. One, the quality of the program, a fair increase, and the expansion of the scholarship program. I think that parents who are utilizing the program would absorb, like an alternate 3, we're talking $10 a month, from $339 to $349. And I think most parents would say, I'm still getting a good deal. I mean, and $122 a month to $126 a month, that's $4. And I think we have to look realistically at our budget and at the program, and maintaining the quality, and realizing that we have increased costs that we have to absorb. And we are subsidizing this year by $519,000, which is, to me, a lot of money.
I would like to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to say something also. I tend to agree. I looked at that alternative 3, which is 3%, $10 a month per kid. If you have 3 kids, that's $30 a month, which to me does not sound like a huge increase. I also am very much in favor of having a scholarship program and raising as much money as we can for that. To that end, I would like to see everyone who showed up tonight to make a public comment. Thank you, by the way, for showing up and giving us your opinions. When you guys are driving your kids, you're working or driving your kids to school or something, think of some ways that we could raise funds to increase the scholarship program. I mentioned a raffle. I like that idea. Another idea is maybe we could reach out to the Ed Foundation for a donation. I was on that board for a long time, and we lived to make money for the kids. It was all about making money for the schools and the kids. They might be a good source of possible funds for the scholarship program. Those are 2 ideas. I mean, you guys have probably, if you thought about it, you'd probably come up with some even better ones. I wouldn't mind hearing it. Just email them to us. I think that would be an awesome idea. But I'm kind of leaning toward alternative 7 with the 3% increase and increasing the grant scholarship program. That's where I'm coming from.
Chair?
Yes.
3 really quick things, 2 comments and 1 question.
Okay.
The first thing I wanted to say is I want to reiterate with all this. I was going to say I'm the most fiscally conservative person that's part of this meeting, but I keep seeing Mark Johnson's face pop up. So it's probably a close call, seeing that he's on Zoom and he's on the meeting. But my question is this. I'm a little unclear on the whole scholarship program thing. How long would it take to develop what that would entail, or what exactly that we're dealing with? I guess that's a question for Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a perfect segue, because I wanted to facilitate the distribution by framing what that might look like. And then it may lend to some more knowledge on the comments. And so I'm going to be talking about alternative 7, kind of a grant scholarship concept. And I'm going to wrap that into how that might relate to alternative 6, a discount program. So right now under our discount program, and I'm just going to be talking general round numbers. So our current fee is $339 a month for the full-time program for after school. We base it on 10 months. So the total cost of the program full-time for a school year is, let's call it $3,400. Our 20% discount, if you're currently eligible for that, discounts that by about $750. So for those groups, those that are eligible for the 20% discount, they're getting about a $750 or 20% discount on that total price. So when we talk about, and we have, as I understand it, and I'll ask the staff to jump in if I get anything wrong, we've got about 13 individuals, kids that are currently getting the $750 a month. It may be fewer families, but 13 kids. So conceptually, now if you take 13 kids times the 750, it's about $10,000 of what we're offering in our discounting program. Flip that to the scholarship program, the board could set some goals. You could say, we're currently offering 10, do we want a scholarship program that provides $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 in grants and scholarships? And then secondarily to that, the $750, 20%, do we want to offer scholarships at $1,000 or $1,250 or $1,500? So I guess I would start by asking the board, if you're willing, is like, if we're at 10 grand, you want to expand the program on the dollar amount, given that we're kind of starting this new concept, how much do you want to offer? What's the value of the program that you want to fund? And then after we kind of determine that, then we kind of back into, if you will, or if the board wants to discuss it in this way, relative to the 750, what do you guys think is a decent scholarship amount, given that our current is 750? Because what I'm hearing is the goal is to maybe expand the program a little bit, expand how much we offer, but also expand in total, getting more kids involved in the discounting program or a scholarship program beyond 13. And we also want to offer maybe more of a discount. So I guess the first question, and I guess they're kind of one and the same, how much, what's our target dollar amount about? What's our comfort level? And then, what is the dollar amount per family that we might want to think about? Just a suggestion to frame number 7 a little bit. So my idea would be, once we get some feedback from you guys, some parameters, kind of what our comfort level is, we kind of take those ideas and bring it back to you guys, say in a month, with some structure around income levels and poverty and, that kind of thing.
So before we do that, since we're on my comments, I didn't realize I was getting my question with the number of questions, but that's good. I like it. That's progress. I just want to make clear, until I see something, whether it's in a month or when it is, I can't in good conscience vote for any fee increase until I see what it is we're actually dealing with the scholarship program. So I just want to, that's the first thing I want to say. The other thing I wanted to say, and I really want to emphasize this, and I have to say, if you can't see my face tonight, but if you can picture me with my jaws bulging, my eyes popping out, smoke coming out of my ears, I hear this, it's only a couple dollars more a week. I wish we had the same attitude when we talked about golf course fees and just said it's only like $3 more around, or it's only like $5 more around. But we don't seem to hear that when we talk about the disposable income items. And I just wish that we would have board members that would have that same attitude when we talked about something like that. Whereas I think this is much more important, and those couple dollars mean a lot more in this case than they do, for example, in the golf course case. And I just had to express that sentiment.
So Chair, if you guys want to give me a feel for how much you want to spend on this, just, it doesn't have to be precise, just, we're at 10,000 now. Do we want to try 20? Do we want to try 30? And then I can come back and talk to you about, trying to afford that and building that into our budget. So I guess that would be the first question is, how much subsidy, or how much do we want to put into a program on a dollar amount?
If it's 10,000 now, with 20,000 would that be reasonable? We're doubling it, basically. We're doubling the scholarship, the subsidy.
It's up to you guys. So if you frame it in say it's 750 or 1,000, so if you do 20 grand, that's going to give you 20 scholarships at $1,000 a piece.
Okay.
And we'll try to set up income levels so we can maximize that amount, so more kids are eligible for it. So,
right.
So that's the way to frame it. Exactly. If it's $20,000 and it's $1,000 scholarship, that's 20 scholarships. Yeah. And $1,000 is probably, instead of a 20% discount, that probably gets you in the range of a 30% discount in the concept of the discounting, so to speak, given the total cost of the program.
Okay.
I would counter the 20,000 with, you mentioned 50,000. Does that mean you think 50,000 is possible to budget in? Because 50,000 can provide a significant discount to the people involved, but also presents the opportunity for those students who haven't previously been involved in the program due to cost.
Right.
They may be able to join now due to that, and they would be paying something where they're not paying anything now because they're not involved.
Right. So a couple of thoughts, but on a definitive opinion. So 50,000, yes, is affordable. There's a couple ways to look at that. One, you guys just talked about if we had 3 or 6% or something on the fees, then obviously that makes that, so we're kind of, the overall arching program is generating more and we're using some of it to spend more, say 50,000. The other thing is what I'm hearing is that our youth in this program are a very high priority of the board. Right. So we're kind of in a relative to regular taxes and things like that. We are in a growth mode. So what I'm hearing is when I bring the budget to you and, when I say, okay, we have this much extra, revenue to put toward priorities. When I bring that budget to you, if this is one of the top priorities of the board, I would build this cost into kind of, some folks said, what are the other alternative sources? We could do that as well. So that's one comment. Yes, if it's a priority of the board and, and that's the direction you guys want, we'll treat this as a priority, and 50,000 certainly doable. That being said, I don't know that we have, I'd like to get a little feel for how many kids might apply for this thing first, you know what I mean? So it might be something where we start at 30 or, 35, and then we can see what the demand is, and I can bring it back to you guys to increase that too. So.
Well, let me ask a question.
Speaking for myself, I could not put 50,000 into this program. I think we take it slowly. We don't know what the demand will be. And we're not, our job is to provide a good program to as many children as we can. But I think let's start out gradually, and the number that Director O'Brien mentioned, 20,000, to see where that goes. Right now, we are subsidizing a very small percent of the students, which indicates to me that the people that could use it either choose not to or don't know about it. So I just think we ought to approach this very slowly. The difference between this and the golf course is that the golf course is a competitive market. So that's just an editorial comment. This is not a competitive market. What we're trying to do is provide a service to the community.
Dan, I have a question.
Yeah.
But just first in response to that, I agree. Golf is a competitive community, and the demand has been through the roof the last couple of years, and we haven't taken advantage of that. But the question for you, Dan, and I listened very closely to what you just said. So, we have as you said, when we look at the numbers in the budget, there may be more room to do things than we anticipated. Is that correct? And so if that's the case, and I know you keep track of the budget all the time, maybe when you come back with us in a month, you can give us some idea of that, because what I'm hearing, when I hear that, what starts coming to my mind is not only that the 50,000 is doable, but the 50,000 may even be doable without a fee increase. So I kind of would like to get a closer look at what we're really talking about in terms of what's going to be doable with the budget. I don't want to wind up in that same situation where I have regrets about what I decided last year. I listened very closely to what you said, and to me, it sounds like number one, the 50,000 thing isn't all that unattainable. And number two, who knows? Maybe we don't even have to increase fees to do it. So I like a little better feel of what exactly you're saying about the budget now that I've heard you say that, rather than find that out after the fact.
Yeah, can I comment on that, Director?
Sure.
So what I mean is we do have some growth in the budget. When we get to the budget process, there's usually a certain amount of revenue growth that's tied to a dollar amount, you know. But when we talk about the budget, that's competing against all other things. You know, COLAs for employees, maintenance issues, after school club subsidies, enhanced, you know, outdoor programs. So when I say we're in a growth environment, we got to remember that it's in the context of all other things, you know, increases in healthcare and PERS and all of those things. What I'm kind of saying generally, without specifically looking at the numbers, is if we did have an extra amount of revenue, and you guys are saying that this is very important to you, this would be in the discussion against, you know, as a really high priority against all other things. Does that make sense? So what I'm saying is, based on my feel for the budget, and if the board is saying this is important, I feel this item, along with the other things that I'm aware of that are important to the board and other things that are going to be increasing, I think, you know, some dollar amount for this program could fit into that context.
Well, I'm saying I can only speak for myself. I'm saying it's really important.
Okay, that's good. That gives me direction, and I know you guys are saying, and what I'm hearing is the sports programs, the youth programs, you know, in terms of the board's priority, when we're looking at funding, you guys want to prioritize those things really high against other things, you know. So that being said, you know, I've heard 20 and 50. Any other thought on, you know, one, and again, I'm just facilitating here. You know, we're paying 10 now, right? We already have a $10,000 discount program. So maybe we add 20 to the 10, so it's a total of 30. Does that make sense between the two?
That would, yes. 50 seems a little high.
So it's a 20, it's 20 extras.
Yeah.
So we're basically doubling the size of our discounting our scholarship program, or tripling it. We're tripling it.
Can I ask a question? We're not making a decision on that until you bring us back with.
No, I'm just trying to get some feedback from you guys.
So why not start? Why not start at 50? And if it's not workable, we can work down from there instead of discounting it immediately. That would be my approach to it. Let's see if it's doable.
Yeah.
If it's not,
I can give you options too. I can say, this is how many we can do at 30,000. This is how many we can do at 40, and you know what I mean? Kind of the number of scholarships, and then you can gauge the actual impact on the number of participants that may benefit from it.
Okay.
So my next
question. I could go for that. Yeah.
So that's sufficient direction to come back. My next question is, our current discount, if you're in the program full time, and not all kids are, is $750. What do you guys think is, if we want to expand this program and make it more available, is there any thought to what do you think is a reasonable amount for a scholarship to be? You know, and we can set different amounts at different income levels, but just generally, do you guys want to increase the 750 to some bigger number?
The 750 is fine, and I look at the number of people taking advantage of it. I don't know if it increased, if there'd be more people taking advantage of it. That's not, but I would prefer to leave it as is.
Yes, Director Gray, Vice Chair Gray.
In terms of 750, I think a base thought, I think we should split grants at least into 2 tiers. Of the people who are currently receiving the 20% are of a certain category where they're, correct me if I'm wrong, 200% of the poverty line.
Correct.
I think that category deserves a stronger discount. I think, you know.
So Josh, you're saying that if you are more in need, it should be more than 750.
Correct.
Okay, so you'd like to see, so maybe those that are in the higher, you know, in the higher category, we keep it at the 750, but we create another tier where if there's a lower income, maybe that's 1,000 or something more than 750 at the different income levels.
That would make sense to me.
I think the current subsidy should increase for those, and then we can have a lower subsidy for those who, you know, don't need, you know, yes.
Okay. Does that
Yeah.
sound logical to everybody? Again, I'm just getting some parameters here to bring you guys back an analysis and some options. So
Yeah, I could live with that. That sounds good.
okay. And then we're currently at our programs at those that are eligible are at 200% of the poverty line. Is there do we want to keep that so that's 200% over the poverty line, right? Is there any thought that we want to increase the top end of that? And I got to say, financially, that's probably our biggest, and it's just our biggest exposure area. The higher the income limit is, that's where we're going to get a lot more people in the program. So just a sense, are we interested in kind of keeping the 200% as our baseline and working down from there with higher dollar amounts? Or do you guys want to go up above the 200% a little bit? And again, we're not making a decision. I'm just getting a feel so I can structure something that's kind of in keeping where the board's thinking is.
Yeah, 200% of the poverty line, that sounds reasonable to me, but I'd like to hear.
It's double the poverty line basically is where you're become eligible for these things right now.
I think the number before was said that's roughly $55,000.
Correct.
Correct.
I think it would be worthwhile to consider going up to 60 or 65,000. I think that should be diminished. I don't think it's necessary that be,
right.
Equitable, but not equal discount.
Josh, the 250% subsidy level would be 66,000 in that scenario.
Okay.
I
like that. I like 250%.
If I could ask the board members their feelings on it kind of increasing that amount, or do you want to keep it where it is to kind of as the baseline for the eligibility for the program? How do the others feel?
I'm good. I'm good with that.
I'm okay with that too.
I am too.
Okay. So staff, I think we got some parameters to bring something back where we could frame kind of a scholarship program. Do you guys have any more information you want?
I think we're good. I think we're good to bring it back. I will say that the fee schedule is probably as critical as the grant program as far as advertising and getting out ahead of registration periods. So if we on this topic, we want to come back fairly quickly so that those fees can be established so we can start to promote and advertise. So not that it impacts you guys tonight, certainly you have all the discretion to wait on that decision, but that does kind of impact our marketing and advertising for next year's school program.
If I get Zach, if I can facilitate that a little bit, I have a couple more questions. So do you guys see the grant scholarship program being in place of alternative 6, or do you see it being in addition to it? So would we, in place of just a straight discount program, would we convert our discounting program into this grant concept, or do you see any need to do both together? I kind of like, just personally, I think one or the other seems to be the way, combining the two. They accomplish kind of the same goal with kind of some different stuff. So I just get a feel for it. Do you guys sense that this grant would replace the current discount program in the after school club, or do you see a combination of both?
I see alternative 7 replacing the discount.
I would like it to replace it for the complexity issue. There's some families that might be eligible for programs that they don't understand.
Yeah.
And as you build that out, I know that we check eligibility, but my request is that we check eligibility, but you do that the way that's easiest for staff to check eligibility and less burdensome, because sometimes families just choose not to because the burden on a struggling family, and I don't just mean low income, but just when there's a lot going on in a family, if we say hand in a stack of paperwork, they just might not do that.
So I wanted to mention this too. I like this just, I guess, from a staff perspective. So if it's a scholarship program and you get $1,000, you say, but you're not using the program as much. So let's say you're monthly, you say you're spending $2,000. If you get $1,000, that becomes 50% of the program. If we do the discounting program and you're using it $2,000 a month, then it's 20% of $2,000. So if you're a family that's using it less, just something to think about. The percentage becomes less relative because you're focused on a dollar amount, and it's dependent upon how much you use the program. Okay. So it sounds like, okay, good. Anybody else want to comment on this replaces the discount program? Any concerns with kind of trading this out for the other? And again, we're not making a decision now. I'm just, kind of framing this.
I'd like to keep both programs.
Okay.
And we will keep the 20% for the rest of the recreation programs. For the record, I think this is strictly a conversation about the scholarship granting for ASCs. So just to clarify, the 20% would remain the same in the overall recreation program for camps and outside activities outside the ASCs.
Yeah. So if I could get back to Director Abela relative to his comfort level on the fees overall. So I think a couple comments there, certainly in recognizing Mr. Miller's comments about advertising and all of those things. So we can bring this back and hold off on alternative 1, 2, or 3, or we could go ahead and give the staff direction on 1, 2, and 3 and kind of treat the scholarship thing as an add-on later on. I heard Ed say he wanted to be clear on what we're doing on 7 or 6 or 7 before he felt comfortable on voting on the overall issue of fees. Recognizing, that the staff would like to get out. I think we're in February and we brought this intentionally early. So if we could I would ask Mr. Miller if we brought this back in a month, 2 meetings from now, does that still give you time to get the word out? Or Danielle and Richard, we got a little time here.
Yeah, my hesitancy would be that we're, again, February, as you know, is school of choice. So a lot of people are exploring kind of their options as a whole. So they're looking at what the school has to offer, what the after school club programs have to offer. So we are kind of in a critical time. If the board does decide to hold off, we would just kind of promote our fees as they are now and just present that data to inquiry parents.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, we found ourselves in a similar situation in the past. We're able to promote the program to people know that we exist. We typically do not promote any kind of pricing at that point. We direct them to the website where the price will be updated later. Just one other little piece of information historically, we've started registration on March 1st. Again, that's just what we've done in the past.
Dan, do we want to bring it back in 2 weeks then?
We can do that. We have BMX that night, I think. So I think staff we could turn it around in 2 weeks. But recognizing we were kind of looking at it as the BMX discussion. So if you don't mind adding it to the same agenda as that, could we put together I'd
actually recommend that we do it more aggressively for the sake of promoting. So staff would dedicate time to getting this in line for you guys to be able to decide if you're willing to take on both agenda items in 2 weeks.
And then does that mean maybe we should put up BMX for another 2 weeks?
That was my question. Why not just put BMX off for 2 weeks?
We can do that as well.
That might be,
Or you can do both on the same night. I mean, we've developed the idea here and we've talked about it. So that's up to you guys, whatever you want to do. We can bring the after school club fees back with a recommended scholarship alternatives in 2 weeks.
Okay, why don't we do that and move BMX to the next meeting after that?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and then I want to add on the concept of knowing what's in the budget. I can probably give you some generalities over the budget, but that's what the budget process is for, is kind of define our numbers and what our revenue projections are, and then what our expenses are. I don't have all of that data and I won't have it in 2 weeks. I can generally tell you what extra capacity we might have, but it won't be specific because that's generally the process we work through in the budget.
I was asking that for the benefit of all the board members. I kind of get the idea already based on your comments. So I'm comfortable with where my head's at right now.
Okay. All right. Staff, anything else? Is that we got what we need to bring some firm options and hopefully get a decision at the meeting in 2 weeks?
Yeah, we've had some preliminary conversations, so I feel we can put together a report for next week to present to you guys.
And also, did I hear that you guys maybe do you want to hear both or move the BMX back so we can focus on this item in 2 meetings?
I would move the BMX back to, I thought we decided that already.
Okay,
Yeah.
just clarifying that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we should.
Yeah. So
Before
I think under the recommendations, we've given direction to staff. We're not making any decisions. So I don't know, Brian, do we need a vote on the direction to staff? Generally, we got some consensus direction, but we're not implementing anything at this
So we
point.
focused, excuse me, we focused on the scholarship and the subsidies, but we haven't mentioned, are you going to bring back the potential alternative 7?
That's the one I'm bringing back.
That's what he's bringing back.
I don't know. I haven't thought through how those 2 things work together yet, quite frankly. I don't know that there's a benefit to doing both 6 and 7, both from a structural, administrative perspective, but there's some different perspectives on them, but they're kind of one and the same. So I'm not sure a combination of 6 and 7 is optimal, but, and I haven't really, right, guys? I don't know that.
You're bringing the whole thing back.
Yeah. If I could ask the staff just real quick, do you guys think there's a 6 and 7 combination makes sense? I'd ask Zach and the staff.
Based on the feedback at this point, I think 7 is the path to pursue. It sounds like that's more in line with the board's direction this evening.
Yeah,
And
like 7 better.
And we would leave the 20% existing program for the rec programs only, and then try to figure out the logistics and administrative aspect of that alternative 7, if that's what I'm hearing from the board.
And again, when we bring it back, it doesn't mean we implement the grants. You guys could also just continue the same discount program, and we could talk about that too. So, okay.
Right.
All right. Staff, anything else? I think we have the direction we need. Brian, no need for a vote or anything, correct?
I don't think so. Given you haven't, you've asked them to look into it further and come back. So you haven't actually made a decision. So I'd say no.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
And before we move on,
yep.
I did see some communications that said tonight we were voting to raise fees, and I disagreed and didn't like those communications because it assumed we're raising fees rather than we were discussing, debating, and coming up with a consensus and solutions. So as people communicate, I just saw like a couple posts that we're raising fees tonight rather than like the in-depth discussion we had that might lead to raising fees or might not. And then I do want to thank our staff. Richard, Danielle, I know you've been doing more with less. You've been waking up early, staying late, running around, getting to different places to fill in for people with the shortages. I see some of our after-school club workers, past and present, were on the call tonight, including Matt, Kelly, Nikki, and maybe some others that I might have missed. And I know that they've been doing a lot of work, and specifically take the highest compliment I could give you. When my own children went to the after-school club, it's because I trusted you with my own kids. So there's nothing more I can say that is kinder or more complimentary towards the program that you run.
And to that point, if I could, I also heard we're interested in keeping the quality of our program up.
Yes.
So whatever we decide as a board relative to money and fees and the financial side, I think there's a commitment from the board to give Danielle and Richard the resources they need to be successful in the program. So I think I heard that as well, right? We don't want any cuts. If anything, we want the program to be better, right? We don't want to cut the program. We're just talking about how we fund it. Yeah.
If you came to me with a budget that looked really good, but it was cutting the quality, I would not be interested in that.
Okay, so that'll be our goal too, is to keep the quality and the, enhancing the program and all the good work that Danielle and Richard, we want to keep all that on path and on track.
Right. Okay.
I want to echo Brian's words.
Right.
Staff does an incredible job.
Yes.
Thank you. On behalf of the staff, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 10, written communications of note. Were there any at all?
Staff does not have any, Chair.
Okay, fabulous.
I'm sorry, Chair, I do have one.
Oh, okay.
CSDA asked us to write thank you letters to our legislators that supported the COVID relief funding. So we drafted some letters for Kate to sign, and we've copied all of the board members. So just thanking them for creating that fund that eventually led us to getting the money we got to replace the money we lost. So Kate has signed those and you guys will be getting
All
copies
signed.
of those.
Related to
Thank
that,
you letters.
Sandy, I know I haven't been in yet to sign it, but you helped prepare the congratulations to the new superintendent starting in June. I think there's a letter to sign in the board office for all board members if you haven't been in. Is that correct?
There's two cards. There's a card for Jason, Dr. Poplinsky, and there's a card for Dr. Yosef, Annie. And they're both in the envelope with the letters I just signed. So they're in the boardroom.
I don't send them yet. I'll come by soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Item 11, reports by board members. Director Abela.
Thank you, Kate. Actually, I had no meetings or appearances since our last board meeting. It was a busy first half of January, but not as busy. Well, it was kind of busy second half, just pursuing some other interests, but no park board related activities.
Okay, great. Director Venner.
I'm going to start off my board comments by saying I appreciate how we treat each other, even when we disagree, but especially when we disagree. And I hope that we are able to continue that with other difficult conversations and debates that we have. I attended the swap and sell I talked about last time, but it went off really well, especially under the conditions. And I like that there was an article in the newspaper that emphasized the children are doing the selling. They have their own booth. They're making change. They're learning about supply and demand and meeting consumer preferences. It's a capitalist a time for them to think about being an entrepreneur and a business owner. So compliments to our staff for getting that done. I might have saw it in the Thousand Oaks magazine of their activities, but actually getting it done and all the details that goes into it. Thanks for our rec staff for working on that. I posted on Facebook, any Girl Scouts selling cookies, I'll buy the first 20 that did. I might have bought from 24. I've got a lot in the garage. The reason I mention that is as a park district, we support scouting, and I encourage my other board members, if you feel like doing that, you will be surprised how many Girl Scouts are in our community. The first time I did it was because I learned about our Girl Scouts being inclusive and I wanted to support that. And then I found out, wow, there's a lot more Girl Scouts than I realized. So Dan, I'll be bringing in a large amount and we'll set up something in the staff lounge and for our park rangers and our maintenance workers, where hopefully they don't just take one, but they take a whole box, please.
Brian, you've eaten a dozen of those boxes, haven't you?
You'd be very proud of me. I think I have eaten one cookie, literally one or two. All right.
I know we have a lot of staff that like cookies, so that is much. I'm sure they will go fast.
Well, I want them to feel appreciated for their hard work. The San Monica Mountain Conservancy, if I didn't mention last time, Jackie Irwin joined the Zoom for that. And they spoke about the governor's 30 by 30 plan and protecting open space, including for public use and recreation. And they were going over just the broad vision of it at the San Monica Mountain Conservancy. And I was happy that the state assembly member made time to listen in for that. I spoke briefly to Dan about kiosk, and Ed, I think you're going to appreciate the perspective. And when I joined this board, I didn't realize how often I'd say I'd agree with Ed on something, but the perspective is our kiosks are welcoming people to our outdoors, but they're usually, for good reason, just focus on the dangers. Like, welcome to the outdoors. Somebody's going to break into your car. Watch out for mountain lions and poison oak. Have a good day. So I know we have to do some of that safety stuff, but as part of the budget process, when I had a meeting with Dan, we just went for a walk and dreamed of what they could look like. So they could encourage people to explore, get outdoors and exercise, but also do all that safety stuff. I'm kicking around an idea. There's no sudden urgency on it, but I'd like us to celebrate the outdoors more. And as a part of that, with COVID, celebrating people getting outside and exercising for physical and mental health and exploring what we already have available. So I was thinking some sort of summer kickoff hike a trail event. I've spoken to Dan a little bit about it, and staff, there's lots of different ideas. And I know staff is often burdened with all sorts of things happening. So I'm not envisioning an event that takes a lot of staff time to put together, but just somewhere where we celebrate, hey, there's lots of restrictions. We could agree or disagree with them. But separately than that, let's get outside and celebrate the outdoors together for health, mental and physical health. As a part of that, the idea I've been kicking around, and I'm waiting for Wayne's physical reaction on his face. I'm staring at him. I would like to start a program, and I know this might be a policy, that we encourage, we have trail numbers. So we have trails and trail numbers. And I would like to have an exciting event where hike a trail and you get an entry. So you hike a trail, you post a picture of the trail to encourage other people to get outdoors. And at the end of the summer, you hiked a bunch, you get a bunch of entries. And I'm not saying a major trail because they've all got names, but like some sort of T22. And I'm sure Wayne could tell me where that probably is, but some side trail with board guidance. You can't make an obnoxious name, and there's rules and guidance, and we'll have the final say. But just imagine every day you go hiking, you get another entry into the raffle to mark the landscape with a positive name. So I might put that on the agenda in the future, but not the next meeting and not the meeting after that. But I just want to staff later you give me feedback so I could reform my thinking on it a little bit more. But that's it for me.
Right. If I could just on the trail day or celebrating trails, I was wondering if the board was okay with us maybe doing like a nice little trail evening afternoon kind of event celebrating the trails in the open space and maybe involving the board in that event in some way. Does that sound okay? Staff can do that administratively. Just wanted to kind of roll the board into maybe that concept somehow.
I'm good with that. Try to keep it in daylight hours because I can't see at night. So you may be transporting me if
okay. All right, thank you.
After dark.
I'm not a single issue voter, but I hate daylight saving time, and we'll do it after daylight saving time.
All right.
So that there's a little bit more sunlight. And imagine for the community, it could be the kickoff to summer, hike with a board member. And then Dan, I know I've already spoken to Teresa about it, but our bilingual trail guide, maybe we'll have it done by then and we could advertise that to be inclusive in that way too.
Okay.
And if we're not done by then, I know it's an ongoing process.
All right. Okay, great. Director Freeman.
Yes. Couple things. Last night with Director O'Brien and some staff, we had Ventura County Special Districts Association annual meeting, and Supervisor Parks was the speaker. And instead of talking about just the county, she talked about things that she's done in her district. And actually, it was really quite interesting. Some of the tidbits that we didn't know about, the things that she's done. And we gave out the Director of the Year and the General Manager of the Year. And the General Manager of the Year is the current Secretary of Ventura County Special Districts. And it's Brian Pendleton, who's from the Ventura Port District. And he has an incredible resume, and it's a great special district. He's done a great job there. And the Director of the Year is Mark, who has been a director on Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District since 2006. And I was really pleased to see him get recognized. Mark Malloy is his name. And it's really great when your other fellow board members nominate you for something like that. And I would like to suggest that just instead of just a letter to Jason, that we do one of our, I don't want to call it a resolution. It's a photo of our parks and present it to him, because we have had a great relationship with Jason, with the school district since he took over. And I think it would be much nicer than just a letter. I don't know if there'd be a park adjacent to a school that could show that together, or just our beautiful open space, but something like that. I would like to suggest that from the board.
I think he would probably like the open space better, but if it was a park, he was the principal at Lincoln, which is now Monte Vista, and we have a park that backs up to it.
But something that, I know that he's moving to Michigan, something to remind him that how beautiful Simi Valley is.
Maybe a sunset and something warm.
Elaine, I might suggest that if they do schedule some kind of community retirement event for him, we could present it to him then.
Yes.
If we don't have that, we could just present it to him, individually, and personally, kind of. I guess you could also invite him into a meeting, but he's a busy guy and goes to a lot of meetings, I'm sure. So if there's not an event, if there's an event, we can do it there. If there's not an event, we can figure out a way to get it to him.
I'm sure there'll be an event. I mean, their
Yeah.
board will probably have an event for
Yeah.
him, or the chamber will, because he's been on the chamber board for a long time. So
Right.
Yeah.
I think there'll be an opportunity.
Good. Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Gray.
Yeah, I'll try to keep mine short, but I want to also emphasize Director Dennert's comments on getting out and hiking. I'll say in the last 2 weeks, I tried twice to go up Mount McCoy. The first time was unsuccessful. The second time I actually did summit. I will say the first time I just decided to go straight up the hill, and I was not prepared for that. I would say 75% of the way there and realized I should just go home and try again another day. I will promote it though, that right now, I know I promoted on social media, is a wonderful time to get out when our hills are green, the open space. I don't think there's a more gorgeous time than following this rain. So anybody who's listening, you should go on a hike now. It's not going to get more beautiful. Things are going to start browning. You should get out there and enjoy it. And I'll add, while discussing my fiance, she wouldn't go on the open space with me this time. She was busy, but we did do a tour of Santa Susana Community Center and the park there. And she greatly enjoyed the green hills and commented that she didn't know Simi Valley could be that beautiful, that she was used to brown hillsides. She's a transplant from the area in the last year. So yeah, she was complimentary of it as well. I'll tack on that this past weekend, there was an Eagle project at Knowles Elementary of an individual who shares my last name. Quite proud of Jake, who completed it. Wonderful project that helps a lot of students struggling, and that our after school program at Knowles Elementary will also be able to benefit from the project they did there. I know, Brian, I don't know if you actually spelled it out or talked with staff, but I also want to say I would highly encourage staff to check out California's proposal or pilot program for the college 10,000 college loan student forgiveness for students who are involved volunteering locally. I think that's something that could impact after school club. It could impact maintenance or any number of programs. I think we should be proactively chasing that down and trying to propose as many avenues in which we could get, people going to Moore Park, or I think CSUN might qualify too, to come volunteer. That is free of charge. I think that's great. I think we should be trying to utilize that.
I know we might discuss that later, but the parameters, Dan, was climate resiliency, which could include, in my mind, brush fire resistance and protection. And then it included COVID relief or recovery. And then the other one was education. So our after school clubs might work for that.
Yeah. So
Got it.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Oh, sorry. I was going to make a comment. I forgive you all for the Strathern fees. I think that makes sense. I don't know that my fiance forgives anybody. And then I just wanted to end with thanking staff for all the work they've been doing. It's not been easy the past months, the past years, but I do want to say anytime I'm talking to community members, staff's work and dedication and the extra hours have made all the difference to this community. So I did want to reiterate once again my gratitude and the community's gratitude. You do excellent work, and it makes a difference every day.
Thank you. Okay, I didn't have a lot of, I had one meeting. I had the Ventura County Special Districts with Director Freeman and a couple of staff members. And everything Director Friedman said. I didn't realize that Linda Parks had been that active in her community before her election to the Board of Supervisors and City Council and then Board of Supervisors. The only other thing I want to bring up is our Rotary Club is having a blood drive for Aiden, the little boy with leukemia. That will be March 2nd. It'll be at the Junkyard Cafe parking lot, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So let me know if you need more information. I'll be happy to provide it. And that's all I have. Report, item 12.
Kate,
report by-
Kate, I
Yep.
did have one question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
This
what?
was inadvertent, but does everybody like the new format where you don't have to see the looks and expressions on my face and everything? I just,
Yes, actually.
But
No
Ed, I
comment.
won't know your expression if I just say the word committee.
Yeah.
yeah, Brian, that's really good. Yeah.
There's emoticons on the bottom if you ever need them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, item 12, report by district manager.
Thank you, Chair. Operations at the skate park are good. I had mentioned that the city had wanted us to come over to brief them on where we are on the Arroyo, a little background in there. I initially had indicated we got invited over on February 28th. That has since been moved to March 14th. So if anybody of you are interested in attending that with us, certainly reach out to me. I'm pleased to announce that we just submitted a substantial Land Water Conservation Fund grant application yesterday. And we put in for up to $3 million for the S-turn project. So it was about between the grant writer and the staff spent about 250 hours on it, and we had a grant writer assisting us. So that was nice, and we can cross our fingers that we'll get some grant money for that particular project. I'm also pleased to announce that California Special Districts has a transparency certificate or an award, and it requires a certain amount of criteria on transparency to receive the award. We did submit our application to them to see where we are in potentially achieving that. So Teresa had put that together, Pennington, and that's a good milestone. We had our Capri safety inspection. That's our insurer, and they come out and spend the day and kind of they let us know they're coming, but they also kind of surprise us with some things. So I want to we scored a 99 on that, which is outstanding. So we have a clean bill of health, a very good bill of health on the safety of our programs in our parks.
Dan, does that include like they visit any parks, or is that just the district?
Yep, they visit parks. So each year they'll visit different parks and facilities. And the other ones they'll talk to us about. So yes, they make site visits.
And did they express any concern about our new policy with bikes and scooters and skateboards? And
not on that visit. No, they didn't.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
We got notice that there was a finding of some remains that may be related, Native American related, up in the Hummingbird area. We don't know a whole lot about it at this point. We just got the notice a couple days ago, but we were put on notice by the tribe that we may be responsible for whatever we need to do to protect those or follow the law relative to finding those types of things. So that's just a heads up, and Wayne primarily will be looking into that, and we'll give you more information on that as we learn more about it. The Corriganville, there's two sets of signs out there that one is their movie signs that kind of has a shot of the movie and what movies were shot there. Those were recently replaced and upgraded by a Boy Scout, and we're going to be recognizing that person at our March 2nd meeting. There's also a second set of signs that one of the leadership classes put in, more points of interest. Those are also needed to be cleaned up a little bit. So we're working on getting those second set of signs at Corriganville replaced. I recall that came up about a year ago, and so I just want to let everybody know we're working on that. Opening day of baseball, I think you've all got the notices of the days and which ones you might want to attend. Just a reminder that that's upcoming. I think you've received communication on that. I have a request from county elections. They have a requirement to have ballot boxes in certain areas of the community, and they have to have so many per thousands of people. They have a request of us. I think they need 6 or 8 in town. They've requested 2 locations or general areas where they'd like us to consider putting ballot boxes. So just want to let you know we're working on that. We're trying to accommodate some locations where we could put ballot boxes for the county elections division. Our December financials are important because that's halfway through our year. That's 6 months. I'm pleased to report that we are on track and doing well with our budget halfway through the year, and things are looking good. The staff is in the process of putting together our summer concert series. So we don't have final decisions, but we are putting that together. So if anybody's curious, you can talk to Zach about where we are and what we might be doing there. And then finally, we're golf fees, just a note. I know that's important. If you'll recall, we kind of aligning that up with the budget process, but we expect to take our first look at golf fees maybe in April or so on a board agenda. So your next meeting is February 16th. We know that we're going to be doing after school club fees on that night. I don't have any more real substantive items that evening. And then on March 2nd, now we're going to be doing BMX along with a few other smaller items. And then regarding committees, we don't have any committee meetings scheduled other than, I guess, the foundations meeting, not a committee meeting, soccer foundation, and then also the Historical Society regular meeting. So that concludes my report. Available for any questions on those items or anything else.
Dan, it's Harry Medved. I don't know if you can hear me, but before you do the second set of signs at Corriganville, please just check in with me. There's a lot of misinformation about the movie locations there. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay. We have item 13, a closed session. So I guess everyone who doesn't need to be here should vacate.
Well, first I have to read it, so let me do that.
Oh, right. Okay.
So let me do, drum roll, please. Closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.95. Claimant Corey Stone, agency claimed against Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District.
Okay. And
Sheriff, I could, Brian, can we set this up so we can, how do we do that? Adjourn?
Well, again, we can, so in other words, yes, I'm sorry, what are you asking?
What I'm asking is, can some of the folks go? We're not going to have any business items after the closed session. So
absolutely. I believe in the last session that I was attending with you, I gave an indication that we needed to come back in order to give a decision. If you prefer, we can give a decision at the next meeting.
There may be a decision out of this. So out of this particular item, so we should probably adjourn after we come back.
Okay. Okay, I was going to ask. Okay, thank you everyone for attending. We're back in open session. Brian.
I'm reporting in open session that the Board of Directors has decided to accept the claim.
Okay, that's great. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, meeting's adjourned. Have a nice evening. What's left of it.